Good morning. If I can have everyone's attention, we are one member shy for a quorum, and I believe we will have the quorum imminently. But we do have a special presentation today that Mr. Cardenas is ready to present. So at this time, I'd like everyone to come to order, and let me recognize Councilmember Tony Cardenas.
Every once in a while, you run across someone who's really making a difference in your community. And in this particular case, for the entire country and throughout the world, as you'll find out in a few minutes what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a wonderful person. Her name's Carolyn Blashek, and she runs Operation Gratitude. Carolyn, after 9/11, tried to enlist in the armed forces, but was told that it was just a little bit out of the age range for her to be able to enlist. So she said, what else can I do? She started to volunteer at the USO and then realized, I want to do more. And she had an opportunity, as she'll explain, to meet a soldier, and she was inspired to do something personal for the many men and women who are out there fighting for our country and taking on this responsibility. And so far, she has been able to personally address over 20,000 packages to be delivered to our soldiers overseas. For example, each box is filled with an AT&T phone card, books, t-shirts, disposable cameras, film, batteries, stationery, snacks, CDs, toiletries, articles, portable fans, and most importantly, original piece of artwork and a letter from a child, a school-aged child that addresses some letters to the soldiers, encouraging them and tell them that they care about them, they appreciate them, and they love them very much. And the next big drive that they're going to have is on November 14th, which is Veterans Day weekend, and they hope to have 25,000 packages out. And Carolyn will talk about the most recent drive where she had over 500 volunteers and they put together about 10,000 packages or so. And once again, I say these are packages individually addressed to a soldier. It's not like they pull up a big truck and they roll out the back and then they start throwing boxes out to soldiers. No, these soldiers are getting an individual package addressed to them. And with that, we'd like to take this opportunity to show you a video presentation of Operation Gratitude.
Carolyn Blashek was determined. After seeing the haunting tragedy of 9/11, she was passionate about fighting for her country. But this wife and mother of two soon found out she was too old for active duty.
After September 11th, I really wanted to get involved in the fight against terror, and I tried to enlist myself with the various branches, and every branch that I called, the recruiter said, "Lady, you're too old."
But that didn't stop her. She started volunteering at the United Service Organizations in LA, and in March of 2003, walked into her office on a day when everything would change.
A soldier walked in and he started to explain to me that he was on emergency leave. He had just buried his mother. His wife had left him and his only child had died several years ago, and he had absolutely no one in his life. And he said, "I'm going back over into a war zone. I don't think I'm going to make it back this time, but it really wouldn't matter because no one would even notice."
Again, she was determined. She realized that despite the politics of war, there was a huge desire in the community to show support for troops in Iraq. However, because of post-9/11 security measures, people weren't allowed to send packages to random soldiers. That's when Operation Gratitude was born, in the living room of her own home.
Every one of the Operation Gratitude care packages is addressed to an individual soldier, Marine, airman, or sailor who's deployed overseas.
Along with community members and Army volunteers, Councilman Tony Cardenas jumped at the chance to help spread the word. Operation Gratitude needed donations, volunteers, and a whole lot of heart.
It started off with a family saying we care and we want to do something to show that we care, and look at what it has become.
Now Carolyn's one-woman band has literally gone from a porch full of boxes, as you can see, to a warehouse full
of volunteers.
Been there, done that, if you will. There's nothing better. Never a better feeling. Excuse me. To see this kind of reception. To know that folks like you will come out, donate your time and energy, put your stuff together, send it to us with these great letters from the kids and individually written letters to let us know that America supports what we're doing.
As you can see, Jim has a whole lot of big muscles. Big, strong guy. But it said that the strongest muscle in the body is the heart. And that's what goes into these packages. This is what goes into these packages. We need your help. Volunteers, we thank you so much. We need more of your time.
For all your hard work, the emails and the dedication that you all have done on our website and the products and the coming here today is immense, and it means so much. We can't say thank you.
And Operation Gratitude has always had a twofold mission. First, to let troops who are in harm's way know that someone back home really truly cares about them as an individual. And then secondly, to provide an opportunity for Americans all over the country to express their appreciation to our men and women who are out defending our freedom.
I need a hero. I need a hero.
Thank you very much for participating and watching that wonderful video about a great person and a great organization. And we made a mistake of not putting the website on there. It's www.opgratitude.com. That's www.opgratitude.com. And the most everything that you saw there is all donated. Time, the things that go into the boxes, the packages, everything. But the only thing that needs to be paid for, and it's very expensive, as you saw on the screen, over 19,000 packages have been sent, all with people donating the money necessary. And the average package costs about $15 to $20 to send. Remember, it's individually addressed to each soldier. It's not like they just throw them on a big ship and then they ship them over there and they get there however. It's to each individual soldier. So with that, I'd like to give Carolyn Blashek an opportunity to tell you a little bit more about Operation Gratitude. Carolyn?
Thank you, and thank you, Councilman Cardenas, for this beautiful proclamation, but also especially for introducing the work of Operation Gratitude to the rest of the City Council as well as to the residents of Los Angeles. Councilman Cardenas is really the first public official to recognize our efforts, and I really appreciate all he's done to spread the word for us. In being here, I'd particularly like to acknowledge Staff Sergeant Elizabeth Cowie and the California Army National Guard. Really, without their vision and their courage to invite Operation Gratitude into their armory and essentially let us take it over, this organization could not have gone from just an at-home based idea to the significant organization that it's become. And truly, their dedication to their brothers and sisters in combat has been the inspiration for me personally as well as for all the volunteers of Operation Gratitude. So in accepting this, I thank the council, and I particularly thank and honor every member of the U.S. military and the California National Guard for being a part of this and for letting this happen. Thank you.
Councilmember Ludlow.
Thank you, Madam President. First, Tony, I just wanted to say that your comment about the heart couldn't be any more fitting coming from you. Time and time again on this council, your colleagues have seen how huge your heart is and just the emotion that comes from you when you give and when you see the type of civic involvement that was demonstrated on that videotape. And so thank you so much for your leadership on this and your support and bringing Carolyn in today. And then Carolyn, just the epitome of the power of one, the whole concept. Just so amazing to see that. Councilmember Gruhl and I were talking, and I'm going to confess here that quite often when some of the presentations come in, and there's so many of them sometimes, you're still back here doing work, but we started to hear the voices there and started to see the volunteers, and I think you saw here, the whole council chambers went very quiet as people were fixated on that, and that really means that what you've been doing has just been literally the essence of service. And so we thank you. I know thousands of our soldiers and troops thank you. This is a human war, and it touches families, it touches Southern California. So just thank you so much for what you've done. And Councilman McCardenas, once again, thank you for bringing in such a worthy cause to recognize in front of the entire city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Ludlow. Thank you, Mr. Carson. Thank you very much, Caroline.
Thank you. And with this, Carolyn, we present to you a certificate of resolution from the City of Los Angeles and the City Council of Los Angeles. Once again, we give our gratitude to you for being so open and so giving to the people who are literally putting their lives on the line for all of us every single day. God bless you, and thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Cardenas, Garcetti, Gruel, Hahn, Labange, Ludlow, Miskowski, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Smith, Villaraigosa, Weisstein, Padilla, 12 members present and a quorum, Madam President.
All right, let's go through the agenda for the consent calendar.
The first order of business is approval of the minutes.
Mr. Villaraigosa moves, Mr. Smith seconds. The minutes are approved.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Those are approved.
On the regular agenda, item number 1 is an item noticed for public hearing, and the applicant requests a continuance to October 20th, 2004.
Seeing no objection, we will continue item 1 to October 24th.
Item number 2 is a special presentation. Do you wish to hold that on the
Let's
desk?
hold that.
Items 3 through 25 are items for which public hearings have been held. Items 3, 4, and 5 are confirmations of commissioners. Do you wish to hold those?
Let's hold those.
And then 6 through 25 would be before council. There are 3 reports on item number 24. A motion is required.
Ms. Hahn?
Special.
Item 13 is called special by Ms. Hahn. Let's call item 24 special just to resolve the 3 reports.
Madam, on 24, we'd like to just move the Personnel Committee if we could.
All right. If
Personnel
there's
Committee report on
no
24.
objection on item 24, we have Mr. Zine moving the Personnel Committee. Any other specials, members? Mr. Parks?
Continue to August 6th. We have a presentation and the person's not available to that date.
What was the item number?
Item number 8.
Item number 8 will be continued to August?
Yes, August 6th.
August 6th. Any other specials? If not, with those called special, those exceptions, open the roll on the remainder. Oh, Mr. Parks?
Yeah, number 10.
Number 10 also is called special by Mr. Parks. All right. The remainder are now before us. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved as recommended.
Next items are items for which public hearings have not been held. Items 26 through 74. 10 votes are required for consideration.
All right. I see no public cards submitted on those numbers, so the public hearing is opened and closed. Those matters are now before us. Members, any specials? 26 through, what was the number?
74.
74. The entirety of the rest of the agenda? Any specials, members? If not, open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved.
Madam Chair, could we ask number 37 to go forthwith, please?
37 will go forthwith, without objection. Well, actually, it's not the whole agenda forthwith, since this is our last meeting day of the fiscal year.
Next item, Madam President, item number 75 is the closed session. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
Yes, we'll hold that on the desk.
And on the on the continuation agenda, item number 76 is an item for which public hearing has been held.
All right, 76 is before us. Would anyone like to call that special? Seeing none, item 76 is before us. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved.
And then that would take council back to the items that were called special and also public comment.
All right, well, let's take the three commissioners who are before us today as items 3, 4, and 5.
That would be Mr. Voss, Mr. Stanley, and Mr. Zifkin.
All right, we'll have the commissioners come forward, the commissioner appointees. Members, these are 3 appointees to the Airport Commission, a Commerce, Energy, and Natural Resources Committee report. Committee meeting was held in the community. We had testimony on these 3 members. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I want to thank you for your commitment to the city, your work. As you know, we're at a very critical juncture here in terms of how we move this economic engine we call the LA Airport, not only for the city, but for the region. And I just wanted to get from your point of view, given your role as commissioners, your relationship, or should I say, how do you perceive the relationship of this economic engine as it connects to the different parts of the city? Where do you see opportunities for job creation, training? As you know, we've been going through these spikes of crime throughout our city. We know that jobs and economic development is the best antidote for dealing with these issues when young people are trying to find a place to work. We have a great infrastructure with the unions, with the different businesses. So it's a very complicated issue, but from your commissioner's point of view, where do you see opportunities for creativity and working with all the different stakeholders that are in front of us? You can just start on down the line.
Yes, and good morning, and thank you for your comments. There has already been some discussion, specifically, not just with respect to jobs in general, but jobs for at-risk people, as we look at the potential future, and that's going to be in your hands as to what it is that gets built at LAX in particular. But it appears that something is going to be done, something is going to be moved forward, and that's going to necessarily involve a fairly major construction project over time. As part of that project, I've already heard some discussion percolating under the surface about trying to create a program where certain at-risk people are identified and that those at-risk people are given preference for certain job creation and training as part of the ongoing project as a way of removing them from just the mainstream, perhaps even the cycle of returning to prisons or perhaps not having the opportunities for good paying jobs. And I know that the union leadership has expressed some interest in that regard. So I think certainly at a minimum that as we look at how we're going to proceed forward with the LAX project, that there are going to be opportunities there as we're looking at anywhere variously from $2 to $13 billion worth of construction over time. It is a massive project. It will have some impact on the community. Certainly in addition to that, making sure that we make sure that all of our various regional airports are protected, that our regional airports are continued to grow, not just focusing on LAX, but looking at opportunities to make sure that we see that growth distributed throughout the great city of Los Angeles is going to be critical to the economic engine of Los Angeles. And if you look at the numbers and you see how much it is that our aviation system contributes to the economy of Los Angeles and the number of jobs, it is an absolutely staggering total. So that being said, it is important for us as commissioners to realize that we need to make sure that we have a degree of efficiency, that we look at trying to develop all of our assets, not just one, and that this will necessarily have an effect throughout the entire regional economy. So I thank you for your comments and concern, and we'll keep them in mind as the first comments that were made on the day that we hopefully receive confirmation.
Thank you for your comments also. I believe that Los Angeles World Airways has a social responsibility to the entire Southern California community. It is an entry port to the region. It needs to be and remains a shining star as an example of what Southern California is all about. That social responsibility goes beyond just being an entry port, but it also has to seek to promote all stakeholders, and not just the stakeholders in the immediate area, but stakeholders throughout Southern California, especially the city of Los Angeles. And I do refer to LAWA as being Ontario, Palmdale, Van Nuys, and Los Angeles International Airport. Sure.
Well, when I attended the public hearings at the convention center, especially in the second public hearing, I was very impressed to hear members of the communities that are immediately affected by the airport discussing a community benefits program, and also hear the receptivity of the staff of LAWA to working with them with respect to a community benefits program. And I would certainly be very sympathetic and want to progress that. It's also, as my two colleagues have mentioned, Los Angeles Airport at LAX and the other airports within the Board of Airport Commissioners jurisdiction are a tremendous economic engine for our entire area. And as we take account of concerns of environmental issues and quality of life issues, we also have to be concerned about those economic engines being healthy and providing the kind of economic support and jobs for our community. And I thank you for your question.
Well, thank you. And in closing, as you know, I chair Planning, Land Use, and Management. As such, I would hope that we can continue this process in such a way where we achieve that balance. At the same time, I just want to reassure you that from my point of view, as chair of this committee, I like to engage that whole dynamic with the leadership of Councilman Sikowski in putting forth a specific plan process and understanding what the green lighted project means and the yellow lighted project means, and achieving that sense of comfort while maintaining that cushion for that give and take is important. But as Chair of Plum, I would love to see this come to my committee as soon as we can, knowing that we are addressing the various concerns while being expedient and moving forward in this incredible project that it means so much for our future. And I would hope my colleague, Councilmember Cardenas, can work with me in making sure as joint committees, if that is a path he would like to take, so we can make this move as quick as possible, because we know time is money, materials aren't getting any cheaper, and we need to move on this project. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Reyes. Are there any other council members wishing to speak? Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here to stand in support of these commissioners, and you certainly are agreeing to serve the public at a not any tougher than other times in our history, but certainly a time that it's going to take great interest in the future of our airports, but certainly a greater sensitivity to the impacts that this airport now, all of our airports now and in the future, have on the surrounding community, which is why when Dennis and I were on the Charter Commission, we changed the rules to expand the Airport Commission to include 7 members as opposed to 5, 2 of which one had to represent the area around LAX and the other around Van Nuys. And we did that specifically because we wanted that to be a law in the city of Los Angeles from now in the future, that no longer would we take commissioners and put them particularly in commissions like the Harbor Commission and the Airport Commission that had such a great impact on the surrounding community, and not be guaranteed that there would be those who would have a local voice. And we feel confident that those of you who are going to be representing those areas do. Colleagues, I do have a problem, however, with the fact that we're agreeing to appoint Jerome Stanley today, June 30th, and yet his term expires today, June 30th. I think that's rather silly. I don't know if that was to make any kind of point, but I don't, in all good conscience, feel like
Ms. Hahn, if I can,
is that a technical?
no, it's a technical. The person who he is replacing's term
Right.
expired on June 30th, but he is also being reappointed, and the committee report was approving him for the next 5-year term. So he's getting a dual appointment for the 1 day-to-day plus the rest
we
of the 5 years.
that. That's not what, according to the report.
That well.
Because I know the mayor's office requested his term to
All right, then if-
expire in
yeah.
2009.
It was discussed in committee, and that clarification was made in committee publicly, and so if the clerk didn't correct
Okay,
that,
that was not in the report or what is before us today.
it was what was discussed in committee. I don't know whether or not the clerk can
Good.
help us.
I feel better.
Me too.
So does he.
At this point, I would like, oh, Mr. Zion would like to speak. We'll see if we can work that through with the city attorney and the city clerk. Fine.
Thank you, Madam President. You like to get into the hot activity. You're at the right commission. And all you got to do is read the articles that come out about the dollars, the research. Some that were like $100 million spent in consultant studies as to what's going to be done with that. You're entering an arena that is filled with controversy, that's going to take your energy, your vision, and for the people that I represent in that far west San Fernando Valley that have to get to LAX, some type of improvement to help them. And I know we got the regionalization of the airports, but there's so many folks that have to travel to LAX because of the locations they want to venture. And whether they're coming from the west side, the 405, coming from the valley, the 101 to the 405, coming from Santa Clarita, that transportation connection really has not been linked, as I believe it should have, with the airport. While we run the airplanes in and out, we bring in cargo, we still have that necessity to get the people to that destination. The flyaway that they're building currently at Van Nuys, a lot of controversy surrounding that with the construction. And those issues affect everyone in this region. So I know you're getting into a commission that is a very visible commission. A lot of controversy surrounds that airport and the operations, but the everyday individual who has to utilize that airport to fly to their destination, in your planning, hopefully some consideration, maybe expanding some flyaways so we don't only just have one in Van Nuys, but have some other areas where people can jump on a flyaway, reduce the freeway congestion, and just help the average commuter that throws their hands up and says, anyone listen, anyone care. So the commission that you're going into, again, a lot of controversy, a lot of concern, but if we don't have it running smoothly, it affects the economy, it affects the quality of life, and it affects everyone that has to venture out there. My own vision for it is to have that 105 corridor where the Green Line travels by the airport but doesn't go into the airport where it should have. And if you go, and I drove down there and I looked at the Y where they stopped it. It should go into the airport and alleviate a lot of that congestion that people coming from the east part of the county can travel into. So those little areas that can be put together. But think of John Q. Citizen that's sitting in traffic, waiting, and saying, is anyone listening? Hopefully this commission, with your inclusion and your vision and your insight and your experience, can bring about what we need to do to make it nice and smooth, get in and out nice and relatively smooth and safe. Obviously it has to be safe and secure. And that whole controversy about the build-out in the Westchester corridor and the check-in, the baggage processing, all that, those are major issues. But the everyday person wants to get there in and out in a safe manner. So please, in your consideration, look at that. And if you can do something on that little link from the 105 Green Line, that would really relieve a lot of congestion from the people coming in instead of having to bypass. But it really seems like a common sense approach to that solution. So I welcome you on board. I'm going to support all three of you and wish you well in that endeavor. But please don't forget the common folks that have to rely on that every single day.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Zion, today at 3 o'clock, I have to catch a plane to Dallas myself.
There you
and
go.
It just struck me how difficult it is to start in the valley and to have to fly out of LAX as far as planning, as opposed to being a person who's in the basin. And it is something that I really want to get into and explore, the flyaway issue and the people, their accessibility to the airport and the transportation schemes of people in the valley to the LAX airport.
I appreciate that. I know in the past on major holidays, you go to the flyaway in Van Nuys, no, the lot's full, and there was no place for those folks to park. So an individual who doesn't have a family member dropping them off, now they wander around, where are they going to park my car, how am I going to get to the airport? So we really have to consider the 1.5 million people that we represent, as well as the other areas. But then there are other counties that feed into LAX. And we want to keep it moving, but again, like, you got to be there at 3 o'clock. Hopefully you'll get out of here in time to get there in time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Weiss.
Thank you, Madam President, and all of your attendance. This is a good picture. Ron Butcher, you here? Look at this. We don't know. Mr. Stanley, I actually, there's something I wanted to say, but maybe if I filibuster, I can filibuster till the end of your term, and then we'll see if these guys resolve whether you're going to get another term or not before we're finished. Let me just be very brief. Mr. Zifkin, I know you by professional experience and professional reputation, and your reputation is extraordinary. What you've accomplished in your career is extraordinary, and those folks at Los Angeles World Airports better watch out, because you are not going to take anything but first-rate and elite for an answer at LAX, and I'm really looking forward to your service.
Thank you.
Mr. Wallace, I know you by your reputation in the community, and I know you're going to LAX to make a difference as well, and I look forward to your service on the commission. Mr. Stanley and I have actually met and talked about his goals for the commission, and I really appreciated, he lives in my district, and I really appreciated having the chance to have that exchange of views with you. I'm very impressed with what you have accomplished in your career so far and with your desire to give back. I just want anybody who may be watching or who may be listening to know that when we sat together, one of the very first things you said, unprompted, was you talked about your concern for the Van Nuys Airport, for the level of noise and impact it has on the communities in the San Fernando Valley, and you talked about how that had been apparent to you as a recent resident, but as a homeowner in the valley. And it was clear to me from the brief time that we spent together that you're not only going to have the appropriate regional and national focus that this job demands, but that you have a local focus as well as a resident of Encino. And I look forward to working with you on those local issues, as well as working with all three of you on the regional and national issues that will be on your plate. Look forward to confirming all three of you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Villaraigosa.
Yes, Madam President, members, first of all, I want to congratulate the three of you on your nomination, and as I've said to all three of you, I fully expect that you'll be confirmed unanimously. This is, as you know, a very, very tough assignment. We've been working, the city has been working on a plan to modernize this airport for a very, very long time, spanning two different administrations. There's been a lack of consensus in the city on this issue. As far back as last August, I can remember that a number of us said that a $9 billion plan to modernize the airport was just too big. And there was a great deal of concern that the Board of Commissioners for the airport just didn't have the wherewithal, the ethos, the credibility to sell that. And I dare say that anybody would have been able to sell that proposal, because it just didn't make sense to the vast majority of us. I hope that as you begin to grapple with a resolution or a framework, if you will, that you start where Cindy Misikowski has given us a plan that I think reduces the scope, phases it in, if you will. There are many of us who believe that the second and third phases will never happen and shouldn't, but the proposal by Ms. Misikowski is an effort to try to develop some consensus around that. And my hope is that as you deliberate over that, of what that plan should look like, you take into account the fact that a regional system of airports is the only way for us to go. The community that surrounds these airports should have a voice, and we have to give them great weight. And ultimately, whatever we do has to pass the test of logic and efficiencies and the like. And so I wish you the best of luck. I think the three of you are going to be a great addition. I know two of you very well, and the third I hope to get to know in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you, Mr. Villaraigosa. Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. I think it's appropriate that this time that we have the city attorney explain to us the protocols on the term expiring at midnight today for Jerome Stanley, and also what the proper procedures and protocol is for the term that begins tomorrow. Mr. Cheverria, you going to do the honors? Okay.
Oh, sure.
Yes, apparently there's been confusion at various steps of this process. My understanding is that the mayor's letter indicated that the appointment was to expire in 2009, and that there was some confusion about that in committee. My understanding, again, from the city clerk is that they reviewed the tapes of the committee hearing and that they determined that the committee's action was to approve the term until today, June 30, 2004,
Correct.
and that was how the confusion was resolved. There's additional ambiguity added because the agenda for today's meeting describes the matter before you as the appointment to a term ending June 30th, 2004. I believe that the mayor's office has made clear, at least to me, and I believe on the record, that it is their intention to appoint him to a term ending 2009, that was their intention all along. The clear way to accomplish that is for them to, since the appointment today, the appointee would continue to serve if confirmed until his appointment his replacement is confirmed, and the mayor's intention is to appoint him for that new term. He would be able to serve it for at least 45 days if he's confirmed today, and the mayor would have the ability to send a second letter, again carrying out the intent that has been expressed by him all along. Now, whether it's a question whether the action can be amended today and clarified, I can't tell you with certainty that it can or cannot. Certainly everyone knows on the record what the intention is on the mayor's part, which is for this appointee to be appointed to the expiring term as well as the new term. But that's not what the agenda reflects, and that's not the that was not the committee's action.
What the council is acting on today, regardless of what misunderstandings or other intentions by other bodies or other elected officials are, today we are confirming what is before us is to confirm Jerome Stanley for a term that ends at midnight tonight.
That's what's before you on the agenda.
If Mr. Cardenas, if I can also clarify, though, every commission member whose term expires stays in effect as the commissioner
Correct.
Until a new confirmation for a replacement is made. So he would stay in effect until the letter comes through to I recommend the confirmation for the next 5 years.
Absolutely. That's understood.
Are you complete, Mr.
No,
Cardenas?
I'm not done. So, Mr. Cheverria, for the purposes of handling things correctly, I just want to clarify for the record that, as you stated, the mayor does have 45 additional days to get us a letter to either reappoint or replace that appointment for this particular position, right? Correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm glad you said that, because the mayor's staff did clarify to my staff just a little while ago right here in the chambers that they understood that they did have 45 days to get that letter across. I just want to make it very clear that this discussion has nothing to do with personalities. It just has to do with procedure and making sure that this body respects procedures and make sure that we do things correctly and appropriately. With that, I also would like to say a few other things. On the three appointments, thank you, Mr. Cheverria.
Thank you.
I personally don't have any more questions on procedures. You do? Okay.
Cheverria will
Please,
stay
Mr.
nearby, but Mr. Cardenas is continuing to speak now.
Okay.
Has the floor.
Thank you very much. We had discussion in committee, actually in Westchester, on these three appointments, and the committee unanimously approved these appointments to forward them to this full body of the council. In my personal opinion, we have three very qualified, very able-bodied and willing individuals to spend a lot of their personal free time to dedicate to issues surrounding the airports that are owned and operated by this city, and also three individuals who bring unique experiences that I think are going to provide that body that board with some great decisions coming down in the future, some very thoughtful decisions, some very knowledgeable decisions. For example, I was extremely impressed as many people came to the podium and were impressed with Mr. Voss's ability to understand issues, to take the time to actually understand those issues and to articulate them about as well as anybody I've ever seen come before our committee or before this body. So I wanted to personally thank you, Mr. Voss, for your willingness to spend your personal time to the degree that you are going to be spending on these issues surrounding our airports and the decisions that you're going to be making in that board. In addition to that, Mr. Stanley, your experience and your willingness, as you've expressed, to be able to and willing to learn the issues and to invest that kind of time, I appreciate that. Once again, I want to thank you for what you bring to the table and what you're offering to us as a city and dedicating yourself. Also, Mr. Zifkin, once again, I'm just extremely impressed and honored that you would give of your time, your valuable time and your experience. Members, if you get a chance to read their resumes, you're going to be extremely impressed. And specifically, Mr. Zifkin, the work that you've been willing to do and able to do throughout your years and across this country, affecting the lives of people around the world, is extremely impressive, and I hope that the people of Los Angeles can appreciate everything that you've given and what you're willing to give in the future. So thank you very much, and I personally endorse and appreciate your opportunity of giving yourself to this city in volunteering your time, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gruhl.
That went so quick, I thought I'd be on a cue. I wanted to stand up and also recognize all three gentlemen that we're appointing, and welcome to the city of Los Angeles today. You've seen it in its good, bad, and ugly, I think, as far as our procedures. But I had the pleasure of recently sitting down with Mr. Voss relative to business tax reform, and as he reminded me today, the Westchester Chamber was the first to submit to us support of the Gro Garcetti business tax reform, and I want to say thank you. And Mr. Cardenas is right. Your knowledge of airport issues is critically important to moving forward, and so I want to also thank you for your time and commitment, because it is time and commitment. And I'm pleased to see Mr. Stanley here. We've had the pleasure of knowing each other for a while, and glad that you too are willing to serve today and 4 years from now, and we'll get that all worked out. But it sounds like you have everyone's approval. It's just of a bureaucracy. And Mr. Zifkin, as Mr. Cardenas mentioned, you are a legend to many of us. I worked at DreamWorks for 4 years before becoming an elected official, and you are someone who has made an indelible mark on the entertainment industry and others, and appreciate in your time of retirement, enjoying life, that you decided to do this and be a great public servant. And so we look forward to your insight. And the airport issues, not only at LAX, which are is an important issue for many of us, the Valley issues, and where we see, I live closer to the Burbank Airport, where they go over my house every night, and we have less control, unfortunately, over them as we do Van Nuys. But I think that it is so important to involve the community as we move forward on the master plan and the ways to look at the Van Nuys Airport and the flyaway issue, all those things that are really, I think, critically important. We often spend a lot of time on LAX, which is, again, is the major airport here, but to remember the Valley and the Van Nuys Airport and those issues that surround it. For many of our districts, it's located in Mr. Cardenas's district, but it impacts my district, Mr. Weiss's district, Mr. Zine's district as well in the San Fernando Valley. So we look forward to your insight and to be able to provide to us leadership and a willingness. Again, I want to say thank you for your time and commitment.
Thank you.
Mr. Villaraigosa.
Yes, Madam President, members, I was going to ask the city attorney, was going to inquire about what we could do to possibly consolidate these appointments, but after speaking with the chairman of the committee, in point of fact, the chair made it absolutely clear, and it was understood by the mayor's office, as I understand by the chairman, that that a letter would be submitted, a subsequent letter, to renominate Mr. Stanley. And given that that's what happened in committee, we've got to respect the committee process, and support this appointment, and when the new letter comes, we'll reaffirm it.
Thank you. There is no one else on the queue, so we do have the 3 appointments before us today for the terms as listed. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is confirmed unanimously. Thank you for your service, and Mr. Stanley, we'll probably see you back in a very, very short near time, but your term continues until that action is taken.
Look
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing you soon.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Gruhl?
On behalf of Mr. Garcetti, item 76 was accidentally passed, and he had wanted that to be continued to July 6th. So could we reconsider that item and have it continued?
Is there any objection to reconsideration for item 76? Seeing none, the matter is before us. And we will continue that to July 6th per Mr. Garcetti's request. That will be the order. We are now going to take up item number 2, which is a special discussion and presentation today. I would like to invite forward the Chief Bratton, the Chief of Police, and the Inspector General, I believe, is with us also today to make a presentation.
Morning.
Welcome, Chief Bratton.
Morning. Before, they're going to be setting up a PowerPoint that we'll walk you through. That'll take approximately 1.5 hours. And as they're doing that, and before I begin my remarks relative to the reason we're here, if I could extend on behalf of the men and women of the department my sincere appreciation to this body for the very vigorous support that was exhibited yesterday at the county supervisors meeting relative to the proposed referendum for the November ballot. It is very, very much appreciated that there is such a vigorous effort on the part of each of you and collectively to move that initiative forward. As you know, we desperately need those additional personnel, and yesterday it was a pleasure to stand there with you and advocate for that, and we'll certainly look forward to working with you over the next month or so, trying to fine-tune the language of that referendum. So thank you very, very much. I also want to thank you for the very prompt response to our mutual interest in having a public meeting or presentation on the events that occurred last week relative to the arrest of Stanley Miller and the resultant use of force investigation that has arisen as a result of that incident. The intention this morning is to give you a summary of the incident, information that we have developed, understanding that the investigation is ongoing and that a lot of our information is preliminary, so some things may change as that investigation proceeds. Secondly, Chief Gascon will go into a lot of the area relative to what we are doing post-investigation, the various things that will occur now going forward. And finally, Jerry Chaliff, who heads up our Consent Decree Bureau, will speak to some of the changes that have occurred since the Rodney King and Rampart investigations that now, as a result of changes since that time, and specifically as a result of the Consent Decree, are now in force and effect, and how they've been applied during the last week as part of this incident and its investigation. With that, again, we're here to discuss the arrest of Stanley Miller and the resultant use of force investigation by this department and other agencies. And this will be an incident review, and again, we're dealing with oftentimes preliminary information that is subject to change and revision as the investigation goes forward. The events. Specifically, at about 5:17, 2 officers observed a reported stolen vehicle and attempted to stop it, and when it failed to yield, a chase ensued. Specifically, that vehicle was reported stolen out of Compton. It was entered into our stolen car system. The officers accessing their computer system verified it had been stolen, and after observing it go through the red light, began that pursuit. The pursuit involved some of the new elements of our pursuit policy, in which a helicopter was requested and did respond, as well as a supervisor. The pursuit ended at approximately 5:38, about 21 minutes later, in the city of Compton. The suspect, Stanley Miller, was arrested for grand theft auto and felony evading the chase. He was held for parole violation and also a probation issue. The pursuit started at Figueroa and Laconia Boulevard. It lasted for 21 minutes. The pursuit ended at Caldwell Street and Oleander Avenue in the city of Compton. What you see on the screen now is a aerial view. All of these pictures are from television outtakes. We have been seeking to get the actual videos from the two television stations. In addition to our helicopter, there were two news helicopters that were involved in filming this pursuit and the resultant close at the end. The white car you see in the lower screen is the vehicle driven by the suspect in this matter. The first police car is the primary unit, and that involves Officer Hatfield, who was the driver of the vehicle, and his partner, Officer O'Connor. The second unit is also from the Southeast Division. That's Officer Behrens and Officer Bueno. The suspect exited the vehicle, and he ran northbound along a concrete-walled creek bed. He was on a dirt road parallel along the wash. So what you see in this photo here, the red circle is the suspect beginning to run up the dirt road. The blue circle is an officer from the second vehicle, and then you see a second blue circle by the police vehicle. That's his partner exiting. So the two closest officers in the pursuit were actually from the second vehicle. This is a view looking down that dirt road, and there's a curve there so that as you're actually at the end of the street, that you would not be able to see down the dirt road. The foot chase itself, suspect Miller was ultimately joined by 7 officers and 1 sergeant at the scene of the arrest. 1 officer remained with the stolen vehicle and did not pursue the subject. I'd exercise this caution that at this time, all times are preliminary at this point of the investigation and may change, particularly as we get access to the videos from the 2 TV stations. The chase itself covered a distance of approximately 638 feet from the vehicle, the stolen car vehicle, to the point in time where the foot chase ends. And what you see on the screen is the start of the foot chase. It took approximately 36 and a half seconds to cover that distance, 638 feet. What you see on the screen now is the first tackle and then the first flashlight strike, the first flashlight strike of the 11 that were delivered. From the tackle to that first flashlight strike is a time of approximately 5 seconds. What you're seeing now is the first flashlight strike to the last flashlight strike. Time element there is approximately 7 seconds, almost 8 seconds for the 11 strikes. From the tackle till the officers basically release the suspect, release in the sense that they have now have him standing up, is 1 minute and 19 seconds. So as you can see, this is happening very, very quickly from the time of the initial foot pursuit on through the actual handcuffing and standing up of the suspect. The medical issues relative to the suspect's movements. Initially, the suspect was taken into custody. He was then transported from the scene to the Southeast Division. He was seen by medical personnel from a responding ambulance at the Southeast Station. His blood pressure was taken. He was sent from Southeast to the Parker Administrative Building, accompanied by 2 sergeants. Photos at PAB were taken at that time. From the PAB, he was then sent to the hospital. From the hospital, he was returned to Southeast for booking. At Southeast, he was directed to be taken back to PAB for booking. He was transported back to PAB. At the PAB jail, he was booked, photos were taken, fingerprints, and then taken through the dispensary that we have at that jail. He was transported from the Park Administrative Building to the sheriff's custody, booked at the county jail, and in county jail, he was moved to special housing. might point out that subsequent to county jail, within the last several days, he has had his parole revoked, and he has been moved to the Chino Correctional Facility, and he's now in the custody of the state corrections officials. At this point in time, speak to the investigation, and I'm going to ask Chief Gascon at this point in time to come in and move you through the investigation.
And very quickly, the consent decree that has multiple requirements. One of them is that the officers get separated if there is a categorical use of force, which I will explain in a moment. However, this particular incident initially was not deemed to be one, and in fact, it was made one under the direction of the Chief of Police. Nevertheless, Captain Diaz, the commanding officer of Southeast, out of abundance of precaution in this case, he elected at 6:45 in the morning to separate all the officers. So they were separated within 45 minutes roughly from the time of the incident. As I indicated, initially this incident was not classified as a categorical use of force. Numerous notifications were made. There was allegations of misconduct, so the officers, all the notifications pursuant to that were made. If you look at the separation that took place at approximately 6:45 in the morning, you notice that the officers are the ones on the right-hand column, the involved officers, and the supervisors that actually monitor each of those individuals separately according to the consent decree protocols are on the left-hand column. The investigation, Professional Standards Bureau responded and began to conduct a separate investigation both into the criminal and administrative side. Some of the things that are taking place as a result of that is a review of all the communications that took place, both the radio voice communications as well as the digital written communications. All the officers have been interviewed as well as all the witnesses that we're aware of. Professional Standard Bureaus has created a record management system for this particular incident to track all the documents and all the movements in this particular investigation. And again, this is something that has been initiated as based on lessons learned from prior incidents of this nature where we had to recreate the historical sequence of events. So we're being very proactive in this area. Moving into the lessons learned in this particular case, we have reviewed major incidents such as the Rodney King incident, certainly some of the issues that were attending with the Rampart incident. There have been discussions with experts both inside and outside the organization to ensure that we in fact attend to any of the lessons that were learned from those prior incidents. If you notice, one of the things is the transparency of the direction of the Chief of Police. There's been a tremendous emphasis on the transparency of the process with the media, with the community, with department personnel, and certainly with the political leadership, as indicated not only by today's meeting, but by other meetings that we've had since then. Also, as far as civilian oversight and investigative guidance, the Inspector General was brought on board immediately. We have also sought the advice and the support of the District Attorney's Office as they embark on their own investigation and looking at the determination as to whether any criminal filing would be taking place against any of the participants here. As far as the tapes are concerned, both the ABC and the Fox tapes, we have requested from both of these television stations that these items not be destroyed. And there is a grand jury subpoena that was served June 29th in order to gain access to the actual tapes. By the way, what you have seen so far is a second-generation copy of the tapes. We do not currently have access to the original tapes. The tapes are being enhanced. We have sought the help of the Justice Department in order to get these tapes enhanced, and there's actually, they have been broken down as actually 15,000 frames of this entire incident that have been taken in the smallest minute pieces to be able to take a good look at them. There's one of the photos, the aerial view of the photo, of course, that was taken later on during the day of the location. The neighborhood has been canvassed a total of 5 times. LAPD personnel alone have canvassed the neighborhood at different times of the day including going back to the same time of the day when the original incident occurred. And then a fifth time, there is a joint canvass that has taken place where you have LAPD personnel and FBI personnel as the lead. We have also are looking at interviewing a sergeant and a deputy sheriff that was present at the scene that originally we were not aware of their presence, but we learned later on by reviewing some of the tapes. All the forensic evidence in this case, there were subpoenas that were obtained, for instance, for the officer's flashlight, the boots, and other items that were at the scene in order to have appropriate sequence of both custody and analysis of all forensic evidence. The wire cutters that were found on the suspect also were taken into custody, as well as a Slim Jim that was found at the scene, taken from the stolen vehicle, and some other items. Moving over to the training background, one of the things that we're doing as part of this investigation is actually taking two approaches. Number one, taking the team's report, the record of training for these officers involved, and then comparing that against all the relevant lesson plans to see what type of training they have received in this area that would apply to the issues that are being reviewed in this particular case, such as the use of the flashlight, verbalization, and other use of force-related matters. Very quickly, a summary of the arrest. Mr. Miller, as the chief indicated earlier, he was arrested for grand theft auto, and this is currently being reviewed by the district attorney for filing considerations. He is on parole currently. He is also on probation. And as the chief indicated, he has been moved to the custody of the state correction system. As I indicated earlier, other agencies that are participating in this investigation is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as well as the Sheriff Department. The actual incident took place within sheriff jurisdiction. The city of Compton is policed by the Sheriff Department, so they are also part of the investigation. Very briefly, some of the other attendant issues that are being looked at is the administrative review of the pursuit, how many units were involved, whether they follow our policies and procedures. We're reviewing both the MDT as well as the radio communications and directions by the sergeants to the officers. Clearly, that would be relevant to our administrative review process. Going into the use of force review process, just a very quick overview of how things work. For categorical uses of force, it's defined by the consent decree. They're laid out there, and I'm not going to read them all to you, but basically we're talking about major incidents of force. As I indicated earlier, in an abundance of caution in this particular case, two things occurred. Prior to having been deemed a categorical use of force, the captain took it upon himself to separate the officers and start following the consent decree procedures, which really speaks well to the acculturation or the embracement of consent decree related protocols within the department. This is something that was just done purely out of caution. And then thereafter, the chief gave the direction to make it a categorical use of force. And the reason why he did this is to ensure that we have the highest level of review by the Inspector General and the Police Commission as categorical use of force are currently reviewed. Critical Incident Investigation Division was called to the scene. They are the section of the department that under the consent decree is in charge with looking at categorical uses of force. They work in partnership with our internal affairs and PSB. I should also point out to you, just as a side note, that CIID, and for some of you that are involved in this process are aware of, CIID will soon become a Force Investigation Division, and we're putting it all under PSB, and we believe that will be a more efficient way of handling these type of events, but that has not occurred yet. Some of the meetings that have taken place as a result of this to illustrate the level of redundancy, if you will, that we're attempting to have all the partners and all the stakeholders here. If you look at the investigation, June 26th, we have PSB personnel meet with LASD, district attorney personnel, both at the The criminal side is the one that looks at the public integrity side. We've had the FBI personnel that are involved in the investigation. We have also included, in the city attorney side, we have included from the risk management side, the folks that will be defending any cases that have to do with a civil litigation against the city and the police personnel as a result of this incident. The Inspector General and his staff, the Executive Director of the Police Commission, as well as Mr. Shaliff from the Consent Decree Bureau. Quickly on the categorical use of force, the way that the process works is we begin by the supervisors taking a public safety statement from the officers at the scene. That is a very brief statement that is taken in order to determine whether there's a possibility of any unknown victims or anyone else that may be in need of medical assistance or police assistance as a result of the incident. Then the officers are separated and transported to the station. As I indicated earlier in this case, because originally it was not deemed a categorical use of force, the officers actually proceeded to the station, not being separated, but they were separated immediately as soon as they got to the station. The notifications to the department command post, in this particular case, they all took place immediately. We had, again, as evidence of how well the department is functioning and their consent decree policies, we had the helicopter pilot that was viewing the event, and his assistant immediately called the department command post and requested that all the various entities that should be notified, such as Internal Affairs, CIID, be notified, as well as the command post sergeant who was viewing the event through the television cameras also himself has started the notification. So we had a lot of people acting automatically on these things.
Reinforce what Chief Gascoigne just referenced. Part of the thrust of the consent decree was to begin to try to change the culture of the organization in terms of the mandates of the consent decree. As referenced, there have been 3 instances here: Captain Diaz at the station, the sergeant at the command post watching the video, as well as the observer in the police helicopter, all taking steps in conformity with the consent decree to literally get the process moving, that there was an incident that happened here that required a process to be initiated and move forward.
Then the investigation, the incident investigation, the way it works is you have CIID, currently FID, probably another 4 weeks, conducts the administrative and the criminal investigation. If there is any evidence of police misconduct, then Internal Affairs Group under PSV also comes in. The investigation is, our goal is to complete every investigation within 120 days. Now, in this particular case, the chief has given direction that he wants to get this handled very quickly and get a resolution. So this investigation, our goal is to complete it within 60 days. The completed investigation then, if appropriate, is sent over to the use of force review section, which that will be the case in this particular incident. There is a quick overview of how this connections, these different entities work from the investigation to the use of force review board. The use of force review board convenes, and once the board convenes, what you have is you have the commanding officer of our Office of Human Resources, in this case is Assistant Chief McDonald, one deputy chief from the Office of Operations, the commanding officer of Training Group, the commanding officer of the Involved Bureau, as well as a peer member sit on the review board, and they review the investigation conducted by CIID. The commanding officer of the officer involved provides a very brief presentation, and the Inspector General is present during this process, and they are allowed to ask questions.
This is a significant change within the last year or so, where the IG is not just there to monitor, he is allowed to and encouraged to ask questions as part of his review.
Then we move on the categorical use of force review process. Once the board reviews the entire investigation, they develop findings and they make recommendations in 3 areas. Those recommendations are tactics before, during, and after the event, and they can either recommend no action, meaning that they felt that everything that was done according to current policies and procedures. If they believe that there were some training deficiencies, they can say that training should be required. or if they believe that there was a violation of policies and procedures, then they recommend an administrative disapproval. The drawing of the weapon, if there's a weapon involved, and by weapon we're talking a firearm, they also determine whether it's in or out of policy, and then the use of force whether it's in and out of policy. In either case, if it's in out of policy, then they recommend administrative disapproval. This process then is presented to the chief of police. He reviews it, and then he can either adopt the recommendation of the board, or he can come up with his own recommendations, and then that proceeds to the police commission. When it goes to the police commission basically has roughly 60 days where the Inspector General reviews the entire investigation. The Inspector General can recommend either to adopt the report as it was written by the Chief of Police, or recommend something other than the adoption of the report. That is discussed in closed session by all members of the commission, as well as the Inspector General and the Chief of Police, and then in closed session, a decision is made, and then the report is final. Once you finalize that process, if you have an auto policy determination by the police commission, then the process then goes into the discipline realm. There are several things that they can do at this point. Is they can either recommend what we call a paper penalty, which is either an admonition or an official reprimand, or they can recommend a suspension, a demotion, or a removal through a board of rights. Now, a side note on this is the Chief of Police can also, ahead of this process, if there is egregious misconduct, he can also recommend that this be adjudicated by a board of rights. Certainly, the officer also has the option, if he or she disagrees with the findings, and a board of rights has not been directed, they can opt for a board of rights. A board of rights is composed of two command or staff officers, and one civilian member of the board. The officer, the command personnel is selected by drawing of names by the accused officer, and in concurrence with the department, and the civilian member is picked by the police commission. The board of rights is a trial de novo. They review all the evidence, and they come up with findings. The findings are forwarded to the chief of police, and then the chief of police has two options. He can either accept the board's recommendations, or he can reduce the penalty. He may not increase the penalty that is given by the board. Therefore, to some extent, under the current system, the chief of police is somewhat handicapped, and he doesn't have complete control of that final process. And then we go into the consent decree, and Mr. Shaliff is going to cover that.
Before Mr. Chaliff gives you that synopsis, that will only take a few moments. What I'm attempting to do is, in the limited time available, give you a brief review of incident, what we know, the investigation, which is very comprehensive, going a lot of different directions, the transparency initiatives, of which this is one, a quick run-through of the process, the very involved, complicated, multifaceted, multi-entity process of the disciplinary system. And I think this is probably the element of it that's going to be the most confusing to people, that this is a very involved process that is intended to protect the rights of everybody involved. And my apologies for going through it as quickly as we did, but it is, as you see, a very elaborate one that's been constructed over many years. With that, this city has invested a phenomenal amount of time, energy, and money in the consent decree. And that consent decree builds, in many instances, on recommendations going back to the Christopher Commission in the early 90s, the Rodney King affair, as well as changes since the Rampart incident. And we thought it'd be appropriate to highlight what is possibly different as it relates to this incident, this investigation, than those that predate the implementation of the consent decree mandates. So with that, I've asked Jerry Chaliff, who heads up our Consent Decree Bureau, to give a quick synopsis of those changes or differences.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. The consent decree was intended to provide transparency, promote civilian oversight, and ensure confidence in the integrity of the investigation of the Department of Internal Matters like uses of force and misconduct. And I think what's happened here and how the department responded shows that not only are we in substantial compliance with the consent decree in these areas, but we are in total compliance with the consent decree. And in fact, these reforms are working. The first is that the consent decree requires that the Inspector General be immediately notified, and he was. He responded, he was briefed, he's been a part of the investigation, as he will tell you ever since. The District Attorney was required to be notified. They were notified. They did not respond, but they have been briefed and they had been given the ability to respond, and had they would have received full cooperation. In these types of investigations, the requirements are that the offers be separated, which they were, that their statements be tape recorded, which they were, that the statements be transcribed, which is occurring, that witnesses be interviewed, that they're at a time and place convenience to them, so not that they would be taken to the station as previously happened, or interviewed at a time that would discourage a cooperation. That's what occurred in this case. Their statements were taped. Their statements are being transcribed. That, by the way, separation of officer also includes individual interviews, not group interviews, which occurred the same with witnesses. That there was a canvas of areas made for witnesses, which you've heard there have now been 5. That all evidence that was relevant was collected and was preserved. An important item is that any report that comes to either the use of force review section or the commission, any inconsistencies between any witnesses will be highlighted so that the reader will know what the inconsistencies were. The complaints had to be initiated and reviewed, a complaint face sheet or a complaint allegation filed within 10 days. That was done immediately. The consent decree requires that because of the 1-year statute of limitations for discipline, that the commission receive the results of an investigation at least 60 days prior, and we're confident that will occur. Additionally, in relation to the Inspector General has been monitoring the investigation, but not only monitoring the investigation, but being provided with the opportunity to provide input and direction during the course of the investigation. He is present at the Use of Force Review Board, and as the Chief said, and one of the recommendations of the Rampart Independent Review Panel was to allow the Inspector General more opportunity to be involved in that, and he is involved in that by asking questions. And he ultimately reviews the recommendations of the Use of Force Review Board, the Chief of Police, and provides an independent recommendation to the Police Commission. And again, I'd like to repeat that the way the department responded, without prompting from others, the captain, the pilot, and the sergeant, proves that these reforms are working.
The Inspector General will be making a separate presentation to you immediately following ours. In closing, the investigation is continuing, and it is comprehensive. Doing the forensic work, attempting to get the videos so that we can break those down, and many elements that have appeared in the paper as questions that are being raised. A lot of that will be answered by our access to those videos, the video enhancements. Interviews are continuing, and we're moving quickly but carefully. We have committed, where normally we're required within 120 days to conclude our investigation, get it to the district attorney. We have committed to doing that within 60 days, and my expectation, based on the speed with which we're moving, that we will probably move it forward even more quickly than that. A caution, this is a preliminary update. We'll endeavor, at your request, to keep you informed along with the various other entities that are involved. The investigation is still early and still ongoing. Some of the information presented here could change, and not every piece of information we have, as you can appreciate, can be shared at this time, certainly not in a public session. I'd also reference a comment from District Attorney Steve Cooley that I think is appropriate for all of us, that gratuitous comments and uninformed conclusions by some elected officials and others at this early stage are not productive and are inconsistent with due process accorded under the Constitution. So the District Attorney has repeatedly referenced that there'd be no rush to judgment. Hopefully that the transparency of this investigation will assure you and the public and the media that everything that can be done is being done, and that the consent decree in particular that shapes and guides so much of what we do is in fact being complied with fully. I have committed, as you know, as part of my time as Chief of Police, that we will embrace that consent decree and inculcate it into the culture of the organization. This is probably the first major test of that, and so a positive coming out of this is that we will see, after all this hard work, does it work? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Let me invite our Inspector General, Mr. Andre Barat, to come to the table and give us a brief presentation as well before we start to hear from the comments and questions of the council members.
Andre will step back if you want then.
Oh, that's fine.
Good morning, council members. Andre Barat, Inspector General for the Los Angeles Police Commission. Much of what I have to say today is pretty straightforward and simple, and that is specifically dealing with our focus and our objective as it relates to this incident. I would categorize our focus and objective as no different than any other categorical use of force investigation that our office deals with on a day-to-day basis. And that's simply to provide a thorough, objective, critical analysis and assessment of this specific incident. In order to meet that objective, we have insisted on complete cooperation from the department as it relates to this investigation, and we have gotten that. We have been following this investigation from every step along the way, and we will continue to do so. If I could, I have a handout that sort of outlines generally the categorical use of force process as it relates to the IG's office, some of which has been mentioned here in Chief Bratton's comments, but I wanted you to each have that so you understand where we fit in. And then after that, I'd like to just briefly describe our specific involvement as it relates to this incident. So if that handout...
Is something, it will be distributed as you're speaking.
Okay, it's being distributed. And I'll go through it, but as it's being distributed. As Mr. Chalip indicated, whenever there is a categorical use of force, our office is immediately notified, as we were in this case. We respond to the scene, and at that time we meet with the investigator from CIID. At that time we get an initial briefing, sort of the who, what, when, and where of what goes on, what was going on in the specific incident. After officers are interviewed, we are then given what's known as a walkthrough, where we walk through the scene of the incident based on the officer's account of the incident. Usually within 10 days thereafter, we meet again with the CIID investigators to go through their understanding of the case. And this is done primarily because there are additional witnesses and other documentary evidence and physical evidence that they have received during that time period, and they come to my office, we sit down and discuss the case and get a sense of where they are. Once CIID completes their investigation, that investigation is then forwarded on to our office, and that's when we begin our review and analysis. As the chief indicated, this process goes to the Use of Force Review Board. Either myself or a member of my staff are present at each and every Use of Force Review Board, and we are there to monitor and most recently, within the last year, allowed to ask questions during that Use of Force Review Board process. After it goes through the Use of Force Review Board, the chief it is submitted to the chief, and the chief submits his recommendations as to those three primary areas: tactics, draw of the weapon where applicable, and the use of force. That is forwarded to our office, and then we review that recommendation. We conduct a separate and independent report that includes our analysis, our thoughts, the way we view the incident, and we provide to the commissioners our recommendations as to whether or not we agree with the chief's recommendations, disagree in whole or in part with the chief's recommendations, and also raise any policy implications that have come up from that incident so that the commission can consider that in closed session. We go into closed session, we discuss the case thoroughly. There are times, quite frankly, where the chief and I may disagree on instances, and I think that's a healthy part of the process. And ultimately, the police commission makes their decision as to whether an incident is in or out of policy. And the handout, like I said, is a flow chart that sort of outlines that process. Moving specifically as it relates to the incident that occurred last week, I was notified that there, in fact, was a pursuit early in the morning, at about 5:37 in the morning. I was then notified that Professional Standards Bureau was rolling out to the scene, so obviously that sparked my attention. I spoke at length with Deputy Chief Earl Pasinger from South Bureau about the incident. Was provided a videotape of the incident, although I'd seen it earlier. We discussed it at length. I met with Deputy Chief Burko and his administrative and criminal team and was given briefings of the interviews as they were progressing. And we spent a majority of the late afternoon and early evening going over what they knew at that time. In addition, I've gone to the scene myself, walked up and down the walkway, have met with other investigators. I was present, obviously, at the meeting that took place with the FBI, the district attorney, the city attorney's office, and I'm glad to say that we have been significantly included in this investigation. We are in the process of receiving transcripts. I have been encouraged to review the transcripts, and we will be providing our thoughts and input as it relates to the nature of the questioning and providing guidance and questions to the extent that any officers may be re-interviewed. So that has been the extent of my involvement at this stage. We will continue to monitor it. We will be involved at every stage of this investigation, and then we will conclude by providing a report to the Police Commission, giving our thoughts and opinions on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Barot. There are a number of members of the council who would like to speak. Let me, at this time, first call Councilmember Martin Ludlow.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to ask a couple questions and then make a few comments. And again, I appreciate the point about being able to provide certain amount of information and some that you cannot. I am comfortable if you literally say I can't answer that question, so I'm just going to ask the questions. Chief Gascon, you talked about the separation. Can you talk a little bit about the comfort that we have in terms of the length of time that existed between the incident and the actual separation? Can you hold my time?
Yes, I can. The incident occurred roughly at 6 o'clock in the morning, and by approximately 6:45, these individuals were separated. What occurred is because initially this incident really did not appear to be a categorical use of force, and technically would not have been had it not been for the direction of the Chief of Police. The individuals were allowed to travel together with their partners back to the station. You could argue that there were clearly conversations between the two partners as they were driving from the location to the station. However, this was a very short period of time. We do not have any evidence to support any kind of a supposition that they all got together as a group and started to discuss the case. That does not appear to be so, because they were separated very quickly once they got to the station.
And I don't know that it came out this morning, but I also understand there's also been a pretty extensive forensics investigation dealing with the officer's boots and the flashlight and so forth. Can you allude to that? I don't know that that came out this morning.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And there were search warrants that were obtained to ensure that if this ever became a criminal case, that all the evidence will be protected. The officer's boots were taken into custody, the flashlight. The purpose of that is to subject them to a forensic analysis to see if there is any indications that there would be blood evidence or any other type of hair or clothing. Also, we did the same thing with the suspect's clothing. So that all has been submitted for forensic examination.
On the Board of Rights, what the selection process and the criteria for the civilian that's on there, can you just talk about that? I don't know if Mr. Shaliff wants to address that, or if you want. Either one's fine.
Talking to the use of force board, I'm assuming.
No, the
No,
Board
the
of Rights
civilian
process.
members are volunteers who are put through a training process and vetted and then serve when called as a full and regular member of the Board of Rights. So there's two captains and a civilian member.
Right, just the selection of that particular volunteer from the pool.
Yes.
Just for, and again, the fact that we're on television right now, just that was a point that was raised that there will be a civilian there. Can you talk about the process for selecting the volunteer amongst the pool of volunteers?
Yeah, it's usually at random, as it is with the captains, where they draw a name from the list. And then there's a question of availability or if there's any issue of conflicts. Other than that, the person's name drawn becomes the civilian member.
but there's a requirement that the civilian be there, and essentially it's from...
One of the changes in the charter, and even before that, was to add a civilian member to each Board of Rights, a full voting member.
All right, and just a last question, and I don't, Chief, if you can you, to your ability, describe to this body your understanding of what this Citizen Review Oversight Committee that the mayor has established is for, and what their authority is, and again, and I recognize that it wasn't created by you, but can you describe your understanding of what that committee is?
Well, my intention with that committee is to do exactly what I just did with you. They're going to get the exact same presentation. I'll respond to whatever questions they have. And as this process goes forward, that we have agreed that we would meet with them probably on a every 2-week basis, and at the same time be available that to respond to whatever questions that we could, similar to what I do with the media, or similar certainly what I do to you and your colleagues here on the council.
All right, and at this point, colleagues, I just wanted to say a couple of things that I think are important. I'm sure each one of you are going to have some thoughts to share. Over the last couple of days, since I just want to remind everybody, this incident happened Wednesday morning. By 2 p.m. that same day, Chief Earl Pasinger and Chief Papa were in South LA holding a community briefing. You had about 45 people turn out with a couple hours notice. What stood out in my mind, colleagues, was not only was some of the information that was presented today presented, which was amazing that your two chiefs were able to present that at that time, but we also saw post-medical release photos of the suspect at that time, and I just want to applaud the department on taking a gutsy move to do that, because I know that's not always provided. Secondly, after that, I'm aware that you all held a briefing for your religious task force Friday evening at the Police Academy. And then I know Saturday morning, Chief, you and the Inspector General were in my district office with about 50 members of clergy from South LA, providing most of this information right here. Colleagues, I think it's really important to give some credit where some credit is due. Nobody wanted this situation at all. Nobody wanted to ever see this happen again. But in light of the fact that it did happen, the first couple of days, I think we have seen a very solid effort by this chief and by the administration to provide information to the public. Just a couple of requests, if I can, and then I'm going to close. One is I just want to encourage this entire body to continue to support Councilmember Misikowski and our Public Safety Committee to keep the track moving on our consent decree and the Christopher Commission police reforms. I think it is essential that this be personality proof. There are a lot of things that we have been applauding Chief Bratton for, but Chief Bratton could leave one day, and what's left behind is the reforms that we're going to have to live with from community to the public. Third, I want to make a note here. I've personally spoken with our district attorney, and I've personally spoken with our U.S. attorney. Both of those offices have applauded this chief of police for being absolutely cooperative. And I think that is a significant thing that needs to be on record, because we did not have that 10 to 13 years ago. I also wanted to mention that I caution us to not push this chief to make a swift decision or a swift investigation. I want to see, as I heard the Inspector General say, which I appreciated, is a thorough investigation that ensures due process both for the officer and due process for the suspect turned victim in this situation. And then finally, Council President, I appreciate you allowing me to go over slightly, is that I believe that everyone who has been staying vigilant on the issue of police reform needs to keep in mind that what we do right now to ensure that the line officers in this city are given every opportunity to continue to invest in reform is really where the rubber meets the road. If they feel that this is a witch hunt, if they feel that this is just a quick effort to hang them high, we all suffer, because they'll lose confidence at the street level that the relationships that they've been building with the community, which has been genuine and real, and you would have seen it evidenced at the 77th Division that afternoon. Those relationships are real, but we're all on very thin ice on a very difficult moment, and it's going to require justice on the side of due process, and it's going to require justice on the side of the review. And I really applaud those who are saying, cool the rhetoric down, Cool heads got to prevail. Let's have a thorough investigation here. And then, Chief, I'm hoping you will brief this body before you release the decision so that we can all have an opportunity to talk about the potential impact of your decision. And I appreciate you being here at your request, not at our request. You asked to be here, as did the Inspector General, and I think that is very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ludlow. Councilmember Perry.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions probably for the Chief. We have this news video, which is an aerial view, and so it's not possible to see things at a more, I guess, horizontal angle to see what was actually going on down there on the ground as it happened. And so, you know, obviously I'm no expert on that, but I just wanted you to help me or walk me through that sequence again, where the suspect was down on the ground and there were a few officers subduing the suspect, and then the officer with the flashlight came, I guess, at the bottom of the screen. And then explain that to me again, if you could walk me through that. Hold my time.
Understanding that all of this is preliminary, that
Hold my time.
we have had the opportunity with tape recordings we have made of the TV film to enhance that 15,000 images so that we have detail that's not immediately apparent to the naked eye. So we do have a better idea, and hopefully if the news media cooperates in the interest of justice and gives us the originals, that there'll be a lot of detail that we can get into. Details such as the controversy about the wire cutter. This is a lot of information we could get from that. But preliminarily, being quite frank with you, I will always be frank with you, a lot of the tactics used in this incident, it's a mess. That it's not what we teach at the academy, and I think many of our officers reviewing these videos look at that and don't like what they see from the beginning of this foot pursuit to the conclusion. And I certainly don't like what I see. In terms of some of the tactical training, the safety that we always insist upon with our officers, these last 2 weeks as part of my post-certification, I have to be certified. I'm actually coincidentally going through arrest training. I'm sitting here with very aching thighs right now because I was on my knees most of the day yesterday doing handcuffing practices. And this 56-year-old bones aren't quite used to some of those positions. But tactically, we've got a lot of issues with our officers' performance in this matter. What you saw, first, the officer approaching with the gun drawn on the suspect, holsters and pushes the suspect down. That's nothing we teach. So we have questions about that. Then he's joined by a second officer on top of the suspect, attempting now to apparently handcuff. Third officer arriving on the scene is the officer that most of the interest has been focused on. That's Officer Hatfield. Officer Hatfield, upon arriving at the suspect, appears to kick the suspect, and we are seeking to get the video to enhance where did he kick him. We don't teach kicks. And then in the space of 5 seconds manages to deliver 11 blows to the suspect. We don't know where on the suspect, head, shoulder, arm. And part of the reason we want the forensic evidence, is there anything on that flashlight that would indicate that the suspect was struck on the head, hair, skin, etc. Similarly for the boot, where did he strike him? Is there anything on the boot that would indicate that it was clothing? We've also taken the suspect's clothing to make those types of determinations. So, as we indicated, the whole sequence of events here happened in about a minute. Rodney King was, what, over 20 minutes in terms of that incident. And we intend to, once we get the video in particular, we have officer statements. We take those statements right away. They were compelled statements. So we have statements at the time of the event that we can match up against what we actually, as we begin to review the video.
And it was early in the morning, and so I'm assuming that's why.
It was actually sunrise. As you notice that literally the sun is coming up. That so a little later in the some of the video, it's actually
Would a
sunlight.
flashlight normally hang on a belt?
Flashlights actually, in the light that this was still a time of day. If you notice our officers at night, I'm out in the field all the time. They routinely get out of the vehicles with their flashlights. So not the flashlights that we have normally don't go into a belt keeper the back of the pants is a pocket. You usually see them go into this pocket.
Okay, and
on
then
back
the
of pants.
nightstick's on the other side?
Excuse me?
Nightstick would be on the other side?
Nightstick is usually on a keeper. We require that our officers carry all of their gear in prescribed positions on their belts. So one of the things that this department is known for is the uniformity of appearance, because we train to that equipment and where it is placed on the belt.
And then one last quick question on the comment on, I guess he was taken into the station and then seen by medical personnel from,
That would have been an ambulance.
okay, and then did anything occur after that?
He was then transported from there. I think there was a whole sequence of, he was back and forth between South Bureau, Parker Center back to South Bureau. It was a,
But no.
and then eventually, he was actually at White Memorial Hospital, where
Okay,
he was
yeah, I
seen
was-
by a doctor.
We
We have photographs of him every day that he was in our custody or the custody of the sheriff, so we have a sequential photographs of him during all that time. Watch for bruising, that oftentimes may take a day or 2 days to develop.
Right, manifest themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Councilmember Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm glad to hear, Chief, that you're going through your post-certification. I think Mr. Zine volunteered to practice some of that handcuffing if you'd like. He's available right over there.
His wrists are too thick, so...
All joking aside, I wondered if you could, and if you'd please hold my time, detail a little bit more of the training that goes on in terms of use of flashlight and appropriate use of flashlight and some of the comments I know that you've made along that and where this fits into that.
The department, and there was an article in today's LA Times, which actually was a very good piece, Richard Winton's piece, that was very good. So if you've not read that piece, I'd suggest read it because it was informative. As best I understand it from my initial review, and this is initial and preliminary, that we don't train relative to the flashlight. I'm going to ask Chief Gascon to speak with more specificity to the issue of distraction strikes, impact, but there is currently not training provided relative to the flashlight, nor do we set specifications as to what flashlight may be carried. So you see a wide variety of flashlights. I have instructed Chief McDonald, who runs our academy and training entity, to immediately begin a review of those policies and any deficiencies we might have relative to that issue in the flashlight, how it can be used and what it can be used for. But Chief Gascon may be able to give you a little more specificity, I think, in the direction you were going.
Yeah, as the chief indicated, there is no written material on this subject. However, it's a general discussion during use of force training, both at the academy level, entry level, as well as in service training. There is a discussion on the use of impact weapons. We teach how to use a baton as an impact weapon when we have an aggressive combative suspect. We tell our people that although it is not the tool of choice, if they encounter a suspect and they do not have a baton in hand or an ASP, which is a smaller collapsible baton, certainly if they have a flashlight, they may use so. However, we do not train on the use because generally the discussion is that the flashlight is a lighting device and not an impact device. But in the cases where you do not have the baton available to you, either a collapsible or the full size, a flashlight may be used with an aggressive combative suspect.
And if you can, and you may not want to, but in this particular instance, there was a baton available, officer?
I do not know whether he had a baton available with him or not at the time. I'm not sure.
Okay. I want to also thank you for, I think, the restraint which we've shown. I mean, we all know how easy it is in incidents like this for folks on various sides of the spectrum to politicize this, and I think we know that this is a test, not just, everybody keeps saying of the chief, it's a test for all of us as a city, it's a test for Inspector General, it's a test for the City Council, it's a test for our political leadership as well, and I want to thank everybody for the restraint that they've shown, as well as the swiftness, and underscore what Mr. Ludlow said, which is not, we don't want the quickest answer, we want the most thorough one as well. One last question for the chief, and then I'd just like to make a quick introduction of some folks that are here in chambers. You've spoken also about kind of the national implications of this case, and I was wondering if you wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit now, you know, seeing this either as a civil rights case. I think a lot of us also see it as a very local thing, but if you'd just like to kind of expand on that a little bit.
It is national for the fact that the history of this department, this city, on this issue, issues of incidents between particularly African-American members of the community and the police department, it receives national attention. National media has been covering this since it occurred. We have the largest consent decree in the country, so there's interest in that both by the federal government as well as within the policing profession. They're all watching very closely. That I've had numbers of calls from my colleagues and the various agencies that I'm part of, Major City Chiefs, PERF, as to how we're handling this, what are we learning from it. And from these things, we always seek to learn. For example, the flashlight issue, that after these many years, the fact that this department, which has probably one of the thickest manuals in America and some of the best training in America, that this seems to be a policy omission, a deficiency. We will come out of this with better policies relative to that very standard tool of most police officers, a flashlight. So it does have national implications. And the good news is, if we do this right, and I'm very confident that we will, I am very, very confident that we're going to come out of this, that we will have reason to celebrate a process that worked after significant investment, that we will have judgment that is seen as fair, is seen as having followed due process. Will everybody be happy with the ultimate outcome? Certainly not, because it's just not the way it's meant to be done. But if we do this right, and that is the intention, and do it certainly transparently, maybe we can begin to move beyond the legacy and, in fact, begin to create the future.
I think that's a very important point, Chief, that as we look at this process, colleagues, consent decree does not exist to make us perfect. No entity, no city, no organization, especially with 9,250 members, will be perfect. It's about putting a process in that shows how we respond when there are those mistakes. And I appreciate the work that you've been doing, and I appreciate you taking the initiative to be here as well. Madam President, with your indulgence too, I know we have a special group of guests here that I just wanted to name as well. From the German Marshall Fund, Richard Virtus, for the last 7 years, has been the Los Angeles coordinator of the German Marshall Program. This is a program that the German government funded to celebrate the Marshall Plan and to promote cooperation between Europe and the United States. And we have the fellows that are visiting here today. I'd just like to announce who they are by name. Antonio Bassanetti, who's an economist from the Bank of Italy, from Rome, Italy, is here. Rio Gonçalves from Lisbon, Portugal, from the Calouste Gulbenkian Museum. Excuse my pronunciation if I didn't get it right. Nora Ionita from Public Relations Saatchi & Saatchi in Bucharest, Romania. Mustafa Laboui, policy advisor to the Federation of Dutch Trade Unions from Amsterdam, Netherlands, and a former council member, I saw, as well. Agnieszka Paczynska, program coordinator from Gdansk, Poland, and Anna Sumarova, executive director, Prague in Czech Republic. If we please welcome them with a round of applause, and welcome to City Council chambers. It's an honor to have you. And today you're truly seeing democracy in action here in Los Angeles, so welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Councilmember Zine.
Thank you, Madam President. Chief, good afternoon. Interesting that we all saw this on the media and everyone was talking about it, and we have one television camera here from Channel 4. When they want to tell the story, they should be here to tell the whole story, not just part of the story. So that's a little editorial on the media. I do notice there are Times reporters there. The Inspector General, your investigation, is it a review of the department's investigation, or do your investigators conduct a separate investigation?
Well, I think, quite frankly, the answer to that question is somewhat premature in this respect. Historically speaking, what our office is charged to do is to review department investigations. However, we have the authority to conduct our own separate and independent investigation, i.e. going out and interviewing witnesses as we see fit. At this stage, I am in the process of monitoring the investigation. I obviously reserve the right to go out and do that independent investigation should we see deficiencies that cannot be resolved from our review. But at this stage, I think it's premature for me to make a statement one way or the other which direction we intend to proceed.
So you have the overview and you have input if you need, and as the investigation proceeds, you and your staff can comment, can make suggestions, direction one way or another.
Exactly. I'll give you a perfect example. Today, we will be receiving the transcripts of many of the officers' interviews. Next week, a meeting is scheduled to discuss those transcripts. At that meeting, we will present, where applicable, questions, areas that we felt were not delved into, and possible further areas of inquiry to go back and interview certain witnesses.
Okay. And I know the chief is very committed to transparency in the investigation and the cooperation, as we've heard, with the department and the other entities and with the Inspector General's office. And Chief, I know that that is your mandate to have it transparent. With that in mind, the other investigative process in place, as I understand, the FBI, the Civil Rights Section, the District Attorney, LA County Sheriff's Department, I don't know if there's any other investigations that are taking place regarding this incident, but the multiple investigations and the multiple investigators, if there's conflict in that with the internal affairs investigators and all these investigators and these officers that obviously have a right to representation, has there been any problems or conflict on that, or have they all been worked out?
No, just to the contrary, that I've actually received compliments from the FBI relative to their inclusion and full participation. As we indicated, we actually did a joint canvass of the neighborhood with them. And I think you'll find that anybody that's involved in this investigation up until this point, and I would expect that it would continue, very praising of the cooperation and inclusion on the part of the department. I'd also emphasize that efforts we're making to keep the public informed, keep our elected officials informed, we're making similar efforts to keep our officers informed. I had a video that went out to the troops on Friday night relative to this investigation. We have been meeting and keeping the union leadership informed. We had a meeting on Monday night, my command staff, the executive board of the union. I've done a number of roll calls. Tomorrow I have 20 officers from the Southeast Division coming up to my office. We're also working very hard to keep our officers informed, because it's very important that they feel that, again, this is not a witch hunt, or that it's the progress that has been made in reducing crime and improving relationships are not damaged. So the efforts of transparency and outreach are going literally in 360 degrees.
And I know a meeting that I attended on Vermont at a church. There was a community meeting, a lot of the clergy from South Los Angeles, and the outreach to the community. The committee that's been established by the mayor, is there any direction on that and exactly what their role is in this particular operation or procedure? Because as I understand, the outreach from the department has been tremendous. The cooperation has been tremendous. I'm trying to find out what the role is of that 11-member, now 10-member committee.
Well, the specificity that you have to speak with the mayor and his staff, but my understanding of it, my support of it, is that it is made up of a very well-known group of individuals, the majority of whom are from that area of the city. It is both African-American and Latino, so that we're able to reach the south area of the city now has actually moved into a Latino majority in many areas of that city, of that area of the city. And as I would expect to deal with that group, it is really to inform them, to hear from them. They will not be directing this investigation in any way, shape, or form. They have no legal authority, et cetera. We are already one of the most overseen police departments, if not the most overseen police departments in America. I report to a civilian board of police commissioners, my bosses. Their inspector general is in here. The federal consent decree is alive and well. We're on the phone every day with the monitors, bringing them up to speed on what's happening. We have you in terms of your respective role, and as we've indicated, we've even gone to the extraordinary length of asking the sheriff to participate in this. FBI is in. There is no shortage of people that have a formal role here, but I welcome and will talk to anybody that can get the word out so that there is no confusion as to what we're doing.
So a message would be they're a communicator to inform the community
It's
of information.
a two-way communication. It's a good feedback to us from that very broad-based group of individuals that John Mack, that it's an extraordinary group of individuals. And we'll be meeting with others that will be doing CPABs, neighborhood councils that yesterday I met with all 120 members of the command staff, captains and above, to give a presentation similar to what we just gave to you. So we are literally trying to keep everybody informed and hear back. Are we missing something? Is there something else we should be doing?
Okay,
And,
just a couple more.
I'm meeting next week, for example, with Warren Christopher. I spoke to him earlier this week, and we'll be going over to present to him. We've been meeting with Merrick Bobb, who heads up the Sheriff's Monitoring Group. We're reaching out to just about anybody that's ever expressed an interest in this issue in this city.
Just a couple more technical issues. Many officers carry tape recorders. Were there any tape recordings, to your knowledge, if you can release that, during that incident?
I am not aware that there were any of the officers involved in this matter carrying that, but again, I don't have the specific knowledge as this investigation goes forward, but at this time, I don't believe that was the case.
And were any of the units equipped with the video cameras that now we have in some?
No, this is in the Southeast Division, that we have some prototypes in Rampart, but not in the south side of the city.
Okay, and I know that there's a difference between the self-defense of an officer, and we know that many officers have been shot at in various parts of the city, and more than other parts of the city in South Los Angeles. There's an issue between self-defense and taking someone into custody. And you made a comment regarding kicks. The issue regarding kicks, as I learned not too long ago, is in certain cases they're appropriate, but never to the head, and never when you're taking someone into custody are you to strike the head with any object. And I think that's been a long-standing practice in the police department. I just want to comment on my colleague Martin Ludlow, who I discussed with a few days, or maybe days, a couple days after the incident, of the cooperation that the department shared with him, and the rhetoric that some people want to stir, bringing up past issues, past situations, and trying to make comments to incite a community, which we are trying to notify there's no reason to incite a community. What occurred, and the investigative process will continue, and the facts will come out to the facts. I know we've got the Police Protective League here, represents the officer, and as you stated, we've got to have fairness for everyone. But I want to commend my colleague who's working closely with the department and representing that community in a very effective manner to not let people bring up, well, here we go again. And it really troubles me when people have that comment, here we go again. And it's not a here we go again. It's a whole different flavor with the administration and with the representation here at council. I appreciate the opportunity to ask these questions, and I've got great confidence in your administration and the other investigations and our Inspector General, which was established out of a charter mandate that there be oversight and layers of oversight. So I'm confident that we will come to a complete resolution and justice will prevail, and the rhetoric that some people in this city want to create and incite for negative fashions, those voices need to be silenced. And once again, I'll comment that we have one television camera crew here from NBC4, and the other ones who've been blasting, I wonder where they are here to send the message that you are transparent and the information is being disseminated to the people of Los Angeles. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Our next speaker is Mr. Weiss, to be followed by Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Who would have ever guessed that Mr. Zine would be counting TV cameras? I'm shocked to hear that. But I do appreciate the presentation, Chief, and I particularly appreciate the aggressive manner in which you have jump-started this investigation and the transparent manner in which you have performed the investigation and ensure that your department performs the investigation. I likewise appreciate the aggressive manner in which our Inspector General, Mr. Barat, has participated in the investigation. As both of you know, I want to formalize and institutionalize that. I know there are good practices that currently exist because you have a strong team in place and Mr. Barat is a strong and solid Inspector General. I want to institutionalize that, and frankly, I want to expand the duties and roles of the Inspector General. Hopefully that's a conversation we'll be able to get to once this matter is completed and we see how the system has performed here. I have some very specific questions about what happened that morning. Perhaps I'll direct them to Chief Gascon since he mentioned them in his presentation. If you could hold my time, Chief Gascon, first of all, to frame us, what was the time when the suspect, Mr. Miller, was formally subdued and taken into custody?
And I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I understand your question.
At the end of the altercation, it's about 6 in the morning. Do you know what
Oh,
time?
yes, the event occurred roughly 6 in the morning. I believe it's like 5:58, that's when, right around that time.
And at the end of the 1 minute, 9 second period, or whatever it was the chief referred to, Mr. Miller is seen standing up or getting to his feet, and he's in handcuffs, correct?
That's correct, yes.
What happened next?
He is placed in a police car and he's transported back to Southeast, not by the original officer, but by another set of officers. And I believe we have that in the presentation somewhere.
Okay. How much time transpired between the time he stood up and when he was put in the police car?
I don't want to guess, but I suspect a very short period of time. It's all being monitored by the cameras, so I suspect probably less than a minute or so.
And which car was he placed in, with which officers?
We have that information, I do not have it with me.
Do you know for how long the officers in question, the three, a half dozen or so who were later separated, remained on the scene?
No, I do not know exactly how long they were at the scene.
Do you have an estimate?
I'm sure that we do because it's film. I do not have that information with me.
Were any statements taken from Mr. Miller at the scene?
I do not know.
Did he make any statements at the scene?
I believe he may have made some.
Were those statements memorialized?
Yes, they should have been.
By whom?
It will be a combination of the officers at the scene writing the arrest report. There was a sergeant at the scene that may have witnessed some of those interviews. That would be part of the internal investigation, which is a personnel matter. Anything that is not included in the arrest report would be private personnel matter, and this would not be the appropriate body to discuss.
I'm asking about, basically I'm trying to get into the arrest report itself. When were arrest reports prepared in this case?
The arrest reports were prepared the same day.
By which officers?
By the arresting officers. I do not know their names. I don't know which officers actually completed the arrest report.
So, but it was completed that day at Southeast, or you tell me?
That it was completed that day at Southeast, that's correct. That would be the standard protocol.
And the standard protocol would have been for which of those officers that we see on the videotape to prepare the report?
Well, that would be probably the officers that initiated the pursuit, although that would be a decision that could be altered by the supervisory personnel of the scene. But generally, the unit that originally observed the vehicle and made the determination that the vehicle was a stolen vehicle will be the unit that will be completing the arrest report. It will be credited with the arrest, and they would generally be the ones completing the paperwork.
And if there were statements by Mr. Miller, they would be in the arrest report? That's where we would find them?
You're going to have different sets. You got parallel investigations going here because of the nature of this case. You have a personnel investigation.
I mean the initial statements that he makes at the scene and any statements that he makes before PSB and other folks roll out.
The statements that were made to the arresting officers will be included in the arrest report. Statements that were made to PSB may not necessarily be in the arrest report. And they may not belong in the arrest report for a variety of reasons.
Mr. Broad, you've been nodding at some points during this. Do you know any of the answers to these questions? Or?
I know statements were made, or I know of at least one statement was made. I don't know if I can comment as to the statement, and my understanding is that the statement is contained in the arrest report.
Do you know, Mr. Barat, how long the officers who were later separated remained on the scene?
No, I do not know the times on that. Hopefully, once we get the full footage of the videotape, we can run that with a stopwatch and have answers to those types of questions.
Which officers collected evidence from Mr. Miller?
If I may ask, what is the purpose of all this?
I just want to know.
I'd suggest that that we get a sense of where you're going with it. And I can make available to you the head of internal affairs if you'd like, but some of these questions, the group at this table are not intimate with some of the details that you're looking for. so we're not going to be in a position to provide the intimacy of response that's probably going to be necessary to answer some of the questions that you're asking.
Well, the reason I asked them, Chief, is because in the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, there were statements made about separation of the officers beginning at 6:45, and I would like to know what happened specifically in the period.
We're still in the process of attempting to determine that.
I'm responding to your question about why I'm asking you the question, Chief. I want to know what happened in the period between the arrest and 6:45. And there were also statements made in the PowerPoint presentation. There was a photograph of wire cutters, which I'd never seen before, and I would like to know, if you're going to put it up on the screen for me, who collected it and when, and what additional evidence, if any, was collected. Do you know that answer?
I do not have that answered, and again, this is an investigation that is ongoing. It is being conducted by our Professional Standards Bureau. I don't have that level of detail that you're requesting. We have general information at this point. This is an ongoing investigation, and one of the things, if you recall, is that the Chief indicated twice during his presentation is a lot of this is still preliminary, and there are more details that are coming into play, and certainly we do not have the full footage from either of the stations, so we only have pieces that have been taken out of parts that have been aired during regular public broadcasting. So there's a lot of information that we still do not have.
I've read in the paper statements relating to the clothing that Mr. Miller was allegedly wearing at the time. I read something to the effect of a claim that either his clothing didn't have pockets or didn't have the capability to conceal wire cutters or a gun or whatever. Do you know what he was wearing?
We have what he was wearing that morning is in police custody, is being held as evidence.
Do you know, can you tell me what it was?
I believe they're pockets. I cannot describe what they look like or their size. I have not personally seen.
Do you know where the wire cutters were found?
I do not know. I know that they were found in his person, but I don't know where.
So you,
Mr. Weiss, if I can ask
if I could,
conclude,
everyone
Chair.
else took a little bit over 3 minutes, if I could. So do you, I just want to clarify, because the wire cutters were shown on the screen. What's your best statement to us as to where those wire cutters were found?
They were taken from his person.
Do you know at what point in time they were taken from his person?
During the search in pursuance to make any physical arrest at the scene.
I also just want to ask one question of the chief in terms of the process that was part of your presentation. Just to clarify, you've promised, and I believe you will deliver a quick and thorough investigation, and I think you used the time frame of 60 days. I just want to clarify that at the end of that 60-day period, according to your flow chart, there's no disciplinary action that occurs.
No, that's strictly the presentation that will go to the district attorney.
And can you, because I know you've expressed strong opinions in the past about the disciplinary system that you operate under pursuant to the charter of the city. Can you give us some indications as to what, you're not going to prejudge the matter, but what your anticipation is as to whether that would also be an expeditious, a matter that you would give expeditious consideration to?
That is driven by time issues. We have to do it within a year, the administrative component of it, so that we don't run out of statute of limitations. District attorney, certainly your former prosecutor, they will take whatever time they need to review what we present to them, and then they'll make their decision as to, I'm assuming, whether they have enough to go for a criminal prosecution, do they need to go into a grand jury. But what we have committed to is to, although the time frame is normally 120 days, that we believe that we can complete our investigation within 60 days that would then allow the district attorney to move forward with his review and decision, while at the same time we continue to move forward with our administrative investigation.
But realistically, just from the standpoint of people in the city who are watching and wondering, the chief has promised quick results here. In actuality, even if you really compress the disciplinary process, we're talking at minimum several months,
You're
several
talking,
months.
I've made it quite clear from the first day we commented on this in meetings with John Mack and others, that the 60 days that we're talking about, only that portion of the investigation that will get it into the district attorney's hands for him to review is there criminal culpability in this matter. The process that we've just described to you that we'll be sharing with the citizens group this afternoon, which we've already shared on Saturday at the meeting that Martin Ludlow put together, and as the chart that the Inspector General has prepared, there is a very complex, multifaceted, multi-agency process that has to be gone through that is usually intended to be done or completed within a year.
Mr. Weiss, I think
appreciate it.
it's
If I
his
could just,
question.
I would appreciate being provided with the information that I requested. If you can go back and review that information, I'd like to know what it is you do know about those 45 minutes and where the evidence was found. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Parks is our next speaker, to be followed by Mr. Reyes and Ms. Misikowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, could you just, one point that hasn't been too clear is what is the level of injury? We hear that there were strikes, but I don't see anything as far as injuries. The level of injury, the amount of injury to the
The
suspect?
initial injuries, and as indicated, we've been photographing the individual for several days after the event to see if bruising was surfacing. I don't have the specificity, but initially that the account I heard was abrasion to the cheek, some reddening of the nose, some bruising that was becoming apparent on at least one of his shoulders the last time. And the last time that I looked at this issue would have been Thursday or Friday of last week.
Okay, so there were head, shoulders, because I think one paper reported there were injuries to the hands and didn't talk about head and shoulders.
I'm not aware of that. And again, my understanding and appreciation of those injuries is very limited and limited to the information that I was provided last Thursday.
But this didn't require sutures, it was just cleansing?
No,
Okay.
nothing to that extent.
The other question I have is that we have an extensive listing of all the things that are going to occur since this occurred, but one of the things that I thought was fundamentally important in the consent decree is we talked a great deal about prevention, creating an environment where people wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, and whether you can comment on that and where you think maybe something went haywire or people didn't abide by that prevention part of it.
You're correct. The whole idea of all of the training that we provide, that many of the changes you made while you were chief, certainly during my time that I'm more familiar with, is the idea that through our training, teach our officers to do it the right way. As you know, and as I know, that unfortunately sometimes they don't. This investigation will attempt to determine, apart from the issue of are there any criminal issues involved, are there violations of our department protocols or procedures involved? And good news is that the 9,200 men and women of the department who are officers, that by and large that they do their job every day without controversy. And the good news is when we do have this controversy that we're able to basically examine it in this type of process.
Okay. The other issue is, and this is a side issue, and I think it's one that's percolating in the community, and it kind of takes us off, I think, the real issue of the subject. But there's been a variety of stories, different people have commented, and I think you've commented at least once on, and I wish you would explain to the public the accuracy. They keep commenting on your presence in the city and commenting on number. Is that accurate at all, or if you can comment on those circumstances, because that seems to be a side issue that keeps percolating.
The circumstances about what?
As the number of times that was listed in the paper of being absent from the city during the last 400 and some odd days or something.
Oh, sure. That actually, that's a matter of public record. Anytime I'm out of the city, that notifications made at very specific hours, where I'm going, how to reach me. Many of those absences are on my scheduled days off. Many of them are at the end of a day that I'm shown as absent from the city when in fact I've left the city at 10 o'clock at night after a full day. We're happy to provide to anybody who wants them my travel and out-of-city records. I'm very comfortable with those and would be happy to do that.
Yeah. And I think what's important for the public is a comment that you don't sense I mean, because several people try to draw a connection in the sense that possibly this occurred because you weren't present, or possibly this occurred because you've not been present. I'd just like you to comment on that also.
I'd hope that not infer because when I'm not here that the department somehow or another operates differently. I've got extraordinarily talented people that work with me. Chief Gascon to my right is one example. Jim McDonald, Sharon Papa, all of whom were candidates for the chief of police and made the final list, so quite obviously they were felt to have the qualifications necessary. So anytime I'm out of the city, I'm very comfortable that we have a depth in this organization that will deal with issues that might arise. There is no requirement that myself, the mayor, any of you stay in this city 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. If you want that type of requirement, well, you better find yourself another chief of police, because I'm damn sure not going to do it. But I am available through this BlackBerry, probably better prepared to be out of the city than any of my predecessors as a result of this device. And again, if people are uncomfortable with it, well, again, get used to it. If you as elected officials are uncomfortable about it, happy to talk to you about it. Talk to the mayor. It is what it is, and it will be what it will be.
Okay. Then the final thing I have is probably the one item that we've gotten more calls about since this incident occurred, and I think you've commented on it also, but I think it's important, is the issue of I think one of the national radio or national TV stations on your comment regarding Mr. Ali with the Nitwit comment. Now, one of the things that came to my attention, and we probably got about a dozen calls on it, was that over a period of time, there's probably been several comments similar, or people perceived to be similar to that they also perceive have been primarily directed to minority communities. And maybe you can comment on that. I think it started off maybe about a year ago. I think it was a comment about a shooting, and you made a comment about that dealt with the term tribal, and then later I think there's been comments about issues of dealing with thugs or terrorists, and people have been offended by some of those statements, and I'm just wondering, particularly as they relate to them as being related to minority communities in general or specifically, just what your comment is on that.
Well, none of those would be intended to demean any community in this city. I think my record on the issues of race, ethnicity, gay issues is quite clear. If you have problems with it, well, that's your problem. In terms of the issue involving my comments to CNN, I have extended a personal apology to that individual. Those comments were intemperate, they were inappropriate, and they would not befitting me as chief of police and representative of this department. I have actually also, as recently as this morning, in an introductory comments to the 61 new recruits of the Los Angeles Police Department, used that as an example in the sense of as they are coming into this department, that to the best of their ability, that when they make a mistake, own up to it, apologize for it, and in a sense, rather than compound it. So the issue that you referenced, that apology was given, it was accepted, it was discussed in public. I'm happy to discuss it here in public. At the same time, in terms of the insinuations that somehow or another I'm insensitive to minorities, I take great personal offense at that, and I'm sorry that you seem to have that concern, whether it's reflected through members of your constituency or your own. Always comfortable to discuss it. Everything I do, I'm willing to discuss in public. If anything, part of the reason I'm here is to see if, in fact, this profession that I love, that you love, you committed your life to it, and this department, can we deal with not only reducing crime, but also improving the relationship of this department with its minority communities, and maybe come out of this with improved relations with our minority communities and with our police department.
And let me just ask you, what you said earlier, if I had a problem with it, it's my problem?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. The one thing I'd just like to say to you also is that, and I agree with Mr. Ludlow, that we do have to keep the rhetoric down, but I think it's on both sides. And I think the issue that we're hearing, and people are offended by it, is the fact that they believe it's directed at minority communities, and they believe that when they hear these statements, they don't see them as a general statement at other communities. They view them as incidents in their community. So I bring that to your attention in hopes that
Well, I
you're
appreciate
sensitive
that, and I
to that.
regret that if that is in fact perceived that way, because that is certainly not the intent.
And hopefully, on reflection, your statement is whether it's my problem, you'll realize I'm representing 250,000 people.
I do understand that.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Reyes, to be followed by Ms. Misikowski and Mr. Villaraigosa. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. One, I just rise to first thank the chief and the police department for their hard work in my district. I do know that these are very sensitive times, and I do know we are at a stage and when we're finally healing from what has happened in Rampart. We are finally healing at the point in which we are showing through real action, real results, like in MacArthur Park and other parts of my district. So for that, I want to thank you, Chief. But two is I also know that you've done a great job in putting together a public relations communication component in your department. You've been able to focus on the Spanish-speaking community. For that, I appreciate. My question is there any way we can help support the men and women in blue to continue building up this confidence in light of this situation that we have? Again, when you talk about that proverbial one bad apple, that's what it is. There was a mistake. There's an issue here. We're addressing it. We're going through a process. But I don't want to, in any way, begin to compromise our public safety issue over political football playing here. It's not worth it. And in my mind, I want to be in a position with the constituents I represent to show them that we need their eyes and ears. We need their resources, support, what little we have in the LAPD. I keep saying that for every 12 gang members, there's one officer. And the public needs to understand that we need their support. And this incident is what it is, and we're going through it. But I wanted to ask you, are there any kind of insights as a result? I know it's gone by really fast these few days. Was there any insights that you have been able to pick up on that might help us support your efforts in dealing with building up that trust and stimulate that communication? You have any thoughts on that?
Certainly, and really what you're doing today, the mutual desire on the part of the council and myself to have this discussion so that when asked questions by your constituents, as well as for your own personal interest and political in terms of as a city council member, to be informed to the best of our ability at this time to let you know what we can let you know, as well as the independence of the Inspector General for him to corroborate or to explain what he's working on, or in the case of, as Mr. Weiss is looking for additional information that we are at liberty to provide, that here at this table we don't have that intimacy immediately in front of us, but some of that we are in a position to provide, we will. Idea here is to try to move this process forward, see if the consent decree is working, does it need to be refined as we move forward, but to just have people feel comfortable that their interests and their needs are being met. And I would hope that that is the feeling among the constituents in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Our next speaker actually will be Mr. Villaraigosa, and that will be followed by Ms. Misikowski. So, Mr. Villaraigosa, you are our speaker right now.
Yes, Mr. President, members, you know, the word test has been used a number of times today and in the paper, and test denotes a simulation of some sort, and this isn't a simulation, this is reality. This really is the opportunity for us to demonstrate to the federal court, to the public, to the nation, that in fact this city is seriously engaged in the reforms that were imposed upon us by the consent decree. Some of us were very supportive of the idea that we should have that kind of scrutiny given the events that transpired in the early 90s around Rodney King. I must say, first of all, it's very clear to me that the system is working. I do find issue with a number of things that have occurred here, but it's very clear to me that this department is working diligently to address the best practices necessary to ensure that we get to the bottom of incidents like this. I was a little concerned, frankly, about the hour lapse between the time, I think Chief Gascon said it was a 45-minute lapse, but my recollection of the time sequence that was mentioned, it started at 5:17 or somewhere at 5 o'clock. It was a 21-minute chase, and then somewhere around 6:45, they were actually separated. That's a long time. Given that, as the chief, Deputy Chief Gascon mentioned, there were a number, from the air, there was a request sent out for everybody to come in because there was an issue here. And so I was concerned about that. I'm a little concerned, and I'd like to, the mention, Chief, about all of us, I think the word was, you quoted the District Attorney Cooley mentioning that we should have cooler heads and not make political hay. I dare say that this council here, to the person, there's not a person here that has made political hay of this incident. Every one of us were careful not to make, and if I could just, careful not to make a statement when we hadn't seen the video. I'm concerned, though, that I never got a copy of the video, although I was told that I was going to get one that morning by...
I apologize. I thought we sent copies over to Harry Ito. We sent
Mr. Weiss didn't
16
get a copy.
copies here.
I didn't get a copy.
They were sent over, so...
So I had to wait till I saw it on TV. Secondly, my hope would be that while cooler heads do prevail, I feel compelled to say that it is my job as a council member, in fact, it's the job of all of us here, to have oversight over the department, to ask questions, to ensure that the public trust and confidence is protected. That is what I think our job is. I do want to finally say that I am concerned about your job, Inspector General, and one, you're doing a fine job, just as the chief and the command staff at the LAPD have done a fine job up to now. I believe that you have demonstrated in the short time that you're here that you're prepared to do and have the wherewithal to do this job. My concern is, do you have the staffing to do this job? My sense has been for some time that the Inspector General's office is not sufficiently staffed. Do you have the personnel and the staffing, the resources, if you will, to appropriately oversee this investigation?
To directly answer your question, obviously staffing has been an issue. I've been before this council addressing that specific issue. But the mayor's office has authorized, and through public safety in this council, the addition of 5 total new staff members, including an additional assistant inspector general and special investigator positions. I anticipate the addition of 2 new staff members by the end of July, one of which will more than likely be working on this case. In the meantime, I believe at this stage I am adequately staffed to deal with this investigation. Obviously, my hands will be all over this investigation, and I've tasked, right now at least, 2 other individuals to assist me in the investigation, and when this 3rd person comes on board at the end of July, he will also be assisting in the investigation. So as it relates to this investigation, I do believe I am adequately staffed. But I would want to reserve the right in the event I need to ask for staff to come before this council if I need.
And finally, I just have one last question and comment. The comment is, I want to be on record as saying that it's clear to me that there's that we can distinguish very clearly between what happened here and what happened in the Rodney King situation. Contrary to the national press, these events are not similar. It's clear that this department is moving quickly to enforce the consent decree, with the possible exception of this separation that I am concerned about. I'll be honest with you. I'm not clear that they were separated early enough, given that there was some idea that this was a serious matter. And finally, I just hope that we're going to continue to be briefed on this matter, so that to the extent that there's an open process like that, I think there's going to be a sense in the city that there's nothing to hide, and that we're willing to examine ourselves in an open way that I think the public expects and deserves.
Let me speak to the separation issue, because it's one certainly we have concerns with. It's one that when I first came on board we were wrestling with. We got beat up pretty badly by the Monitor on that issue. And it is, as you're aware, of concern, because the concern is that will some officers use an opportunity when unsupervised to come together and create a story of defense of their actions. And so as a result, we have this separation provision. Part of our desire to get the full video from the various TV stations is to see, after the arrest, Councilmember Weiss's comments, after the arrest actually occurred, what was going on in terms of verifying. We took officer statements very quickly, and the video may help us to put timelines together. Who left with who? How long did they stay at the scene? Who was seen with who at the scene? There's now a sergeant at the scene. Additionally, because under the protocol of the consent decree, the IG and the separation is only required with a categorical use of force, that there was not a determination initially that that was the case, although within an hour we took due caution and moved them apart. As part of our questioning the officers, we will be seeking to determine, was there any time when all of them were together during the space of the hour before they were officially separated with supervisors, who was with who? So this is all part of the ongoing investigation, and as you can appreciate, several prosecutors here, these things take time, and we will move as quickly as we can, but at the same time, we want to make sure that some of the questions that are being asked, that we in fact are able to provide those answers, not just for you, but certainly for ourselves, so we can make decisions both for the consent decree protocols as well as the administrative, and certainly the district attorney for any criminal concerns that he might have. So on this issue, we're of a like mind. This is always a very critical issue in these matters, and we're still in the process of attempting to put that together. It's not a matter of we're claiming that it was done. In fact, it was done at a point in time, but we are still attempting to determine are there any concerns during that period of time. In this instance, or any instance, because in many of these instances, it is going to be a period of time before officers are separated. Because you've been, certainly, you show up at most of the homicide scenes in your area now, and you see some of the confusion, securing of the area that's going on, until we stabilize the situation.
Thank you. Ms. Miskowski is our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Am I the last speaker? Okay, I would like to try to close and bring just a sort of summary of where we are. I thought it was interesting, as Mr. Zine indicated, the paucity of cameras here today. There is something else that is not here today, but I think it's a credit to LAPD. In the past, when we would have had, and when I talk about the past, I think there are some around this horseshoe who've been through the significant events of the 90s that the city has gone through with LAPD and with the media. we used to have the auditorium, the room full of people in the community demanding all sorts of things, demanding access to information, being shut out, hearing or seeing statements made that were conclusive when nothing had yet been concluded. We were seeing and heard demands for outside investigations, up one side and down the other. We aren't seeing that today for a reason. One, the painful lessons that we've gone through since 92 and moving forward. But in large measure, not just to the people who are at this table, but to the way that whoever is at this table must operate and shall operate today based on the reforms that we enacted in our own charter in Proposition F in the early 90s, and ultimately in the new charter, and then subsequently with the consent decree that this city entered into voluntarily. What has changed is the Inspector General told you he is not only at the table today independently, but he is now at use of force review boards, and that took a lot of pushing. Inspector General, the first two, weren't even invited in, weren't allowed in. They are not only now allowed in, but as you heard him say just in the last few months, they are now allowed to participate and ask questions. What better ability than to have an Inspector General there who can ask questions maybe in a different vein, or say, wait a second, there's a witness who you're talking about who maybe said something else. That is the independence that the reforms created. You also had, and one of the reasons why I think you don't see the community here is because the Chief, Councilmember Ludlow, have been at the community, with the community, not having them come downtown or here or Parker Center in somebody's official meeting room, but out in the community, both the day of the event, the afternoon, with Chief Pasinger and Chief Papa, who was on the scene, with the council member, and then the council member offered an open meeting Saturday morning, unlimited questions to all the African American ministers and others who were invited in, about 40 or 50 people. I was lucky enough to be there. The Inspector General was there. Commissioner Alan Scobin were there. That was not the kind of pattern that we had in this city with our commission, with our police department in years past. We have independent investigations going on now by the DA, by the sheriff, by LAPD, by the Inspector General, but collectively. There is no one saying you have to investigate it over here outside of us. They are now sharing information. Anything that is asked is being given, with one exception. Chief, you asked for the media to give you the video. Has that been given to LAPD voluntarily? No. So they're trying to recreate things. They're trying to look at things. And the media is going to be all over this case. At least the two stations who televised this weren't televising it. There's another really important thing that the chief may have glossed over when he talked about what was going on. He said from the very instant that the event had occurred, there were 3 separate notifications to the department that we think this is a serious investigation and something needs to go into effect. How is that different from before? Because before, I don't know that you ever would have gotten the helicopter pilot to say, we viewed something, our own helicopter pilot, and we think we need to trigger some actions to have people and protocols put in place. In the past, the LAPD was very, very insular. You would have had the local captain there with the perhaps sergeant and watch commanders but it would have been singularly, divisionally constructed and managed before it ever got to see, gee, maybe we should call internal affairs in, maybe we should notify somebody else. That happened instantly, and I think the best piece of information is it happened instantly from 3 separate entities in LAPD who said, we're not going to keep this insular, we're going to trigger the protocols, get the BlackBerries going. The other thing the chief didn't mention today, I think, that he mentioned before, which was interesting, in the past, when something like this would have happened, there was a phone tree. Somebody would call, to call somebody else, to call somebody else, to call somebody else, and it might be 2 or 3 hours before everybody's been called and reached. They now has, as he said, the BlackBerry, where there's an instantaneous, and I'm sure if you've been with the chief or the IG or anybody else in the department, you've seen them in that meeting, and all of a sudden that BlackBerry's going off. They're all getting noticed at once, and I think he's even made the opportunity for the council members who might want it. If you want the BlackBerry to get involved on that protocol, you can get it too. So there is openness. When we talk about transparency, it's not just a word. It is serious, serious change. So I think that there are, and that's why you're not seeing a lot of clamoring here. There's a clamor for justice. There's a clamor for openness. There's a clamor for the process to work. And that's what I think we are now going to move forward. I think the request has been made, Chief, to as you are meeting with the other groups and new information develops, to share with us what you can. But members, we're going to hit some bumps on the road, not necessarily in judgments made, but bumps on the road at certain times about what can be released and what cannot be released. We have something known as the Police Officers' Bill of Rights, which I understand is a state piece of legislation, which guarantees in a due process forum some level of privacy. That's going to run up against our request, the community's request, to want to know as soon as they know what this investigation is discovering, both on the criminal side and then later in the administrative side. What else has changed in years past, just because of the nature of what was going on? Sometimes law enforcement agencies not well cooperating wouldn't file charges, or charges wouldn't be presented to be filed within the one-year statute. After 1 year, if we in the department haven't been able to say there's an officer that we think has done administrative wrongdoing, if that year passed because there's been discussion whether it was the city attorney with filing or the DA with filing, and a year went by, the department's hands were tied. They couldn't administratively pursue discipline and process within the department because a year, they've got to take some action within a year of discovering the incident. So all of that has changed. All of that is being made known, and we are now going to go forward with this incredible system in place, and we need to know, the public needs to know, the process needs a chance to work, but needs to have to answer for what the incidents are, the specifics in this case, the specifics on the general issue of training and uses of with the flashlight or other elements of training that may be shown to have not been properly followed in this incident. But one, I think it's a major change, and I want to commend, and I've got to tell you, having been in Martin's office Saturday morning, the openness, the willingness of the department to be there, but moreover the community to participate, to listen, to ask questions, and to say, at least to this point, our questions are answered, we understand the process, and you need to remember that, as the department needs to remember, that the community is its partner in this as well on all sides and on all aspects. So again, I think this is great. I think we should look forward to hearing from the chief again some point down the line with what is available, whether or not at that point we have to go into some executive session versus not. Again, I think the erring on the side of releasing as much information, being as open as possible is the best course we could be on at this point, and hopefully we can continue that to the greatest extent possible. So thank you to everyone who's been participating in this, and that goes most significantly, I think, to the community in question who has the most significant concerns and needs to be made this absolute partner in this process.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mizikowski. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Chief, and your staff, and our Inspector General for being here today. We have two other public comment cards on this item. I'd like to invite forward Don, I think it's Jones Ilobato, and Sylvia Lynn Hawkins on this item, please. Is it Torres or Jones?
It's both.
Okay, got it.
Thank you very much. I didn't intend to come down here today to speak on this issue, but when I saw the chief's comments, I felt I had to stand up. This reminds me of the movie Casablanca. I'm frankly shocked that you're shocked that this kind of activity occurs. I have to take some issue with the chief's characterization that this may be an isolated incident, that this is not included in the training. I don't believe that it is an isolated incident, since I've been hit in the back of the head with one of these mag lights when I was a law student. And while it may not be in the training, I think what would be instructive would be a data search on the part of the investigators to see, in fact, how many times this instrumentality has been used as a coercive measure. I think it'd be instructive to see how many times the flashlight has been alleged in police abuse cases. I think it'd be instructive to see how many times these kinds of flashlights, which are quite heavy and bear a very heavy blunt force object, have been introduced as evidence in police abuse cases. I'd also like to see how many of these have been replaced, since each one of them is individually serial numbered. How many of these have been introduced into evidence? I don't believe that it is an isolated incident, and I think that the reason that there's no public clamor out here is that the security outside since 9/11 operates to have a chilling effect, to keep many people who would normally comment outside. I think it's particularly a chilling effect because no one wants to have to take off their shoes to come in here to comment. So I don't really consider this to be the kind of a public forum where the community really gets a chance to see what kind of experience that they've had with this kind of an instrumentality. And as said before, I didn't come here to comment on this particular incident, but when I heard the chief's comments saying that this was perhaps an isolated incident and not covered by training, I just had to stand up and speak out. And so thank you very much for your courtesy.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Sylvia Lynn Hawkins.
Good evening, everyone. Concerning the difference, as I observed this morning with the panel and with the councils, I'm very concerned about the flashlighter. It's a camper. It's a shot moving of what is real, really, that went down on the scene of the timing of 45 minutes or less. The equipment of the police working for Iraq is illegal, so they can take back to Iraq and Paris to have another court trial or film of a movie for their president or action in their land that is dead of people activity. We are very concerned about, again, the flashlight that we are known is a camera that is moving illegally. So my question is, the media, was it the media there on time, was dealing with 20 minutes, or was it the flashlighter that was wide as of filming? Let's stop lying. These flashlighters has done harm in many scenes for decades of years. This is the media job to do this at any means necessary.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we appreciate your testimony today. We have this item to note and file. If we can please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is noted and filed. Thank you all. Next item, please.
Mr. President, this is the time for comments from the public on items not on council's agenda.
Okay, now is time for public comments. Number of public comment cards. I'd like to call forward Ediogenes Luvianos Rumbos. I'd like to call forward Manuel Dublau and Victor Manuel Garcia Rojas, Abdullah Franco, Maria Josefina Medina, Miguel Angel Perez, and I will hold there.
Señor Presidente Municipal y los concejales, muy buenas tardes.
Council people, good afternoon.
Estamos esperando para poder echar un ratito un discurso porque la hora se ha recortado. Por eso queremos, como campesinos y campesinas, aquí esta campesina trae a sus niños para darles demostrar.
This farmer brings her children to show you.
Darles demostrar para que los dejen esas tierras para trabajarlas.
To leave us that piece of land to work
Como
them.
autoridades que son,
As authorities that you are,
acurrimos con ustedes.
we come to you.
Y tenemos la esperanza
We have the hope
que lo van a ayudar.
that you are going to help us, and that's all, Mr. President.
Gracias.
Buenas tardes, señores concejales.
Good afternoon, council people,
y a
and
toda
all the
la
audience.
audiencia. Venimos otra vez y las veces que sean necesarias
We come here again, and as many times as it is necessary,
para pedirles apoyo de que nos dejen cultivar la tierra.
to ask you for help and to let us cultivate the land.
En este tiempo no están tan presionados para que puedan tomar la decisión de que debemos continuar.
At this time, you're not very pressured to take the decision of letting us continue.
Nosotros trabajamos la tierra porque creemos en los espacios verdes que necesitamos en esta ciudad de Los Ángeles.
We work the land because we live in the green spaces that we need to in this Los Angeles.
Porque como ustedes saben, el ambiente está bastante contaminado y nosotros cultivamos árboles que nos pueden proporcionar oxígeno.
Because as you know, the air is very contaminated and we cultivate trees that can give us oxygen.
Otra de las cosas, a nuestros hijos les estamos enseñando el amor a la tierra y a cuidarla. Y estos niños van a crecer un día
Another thing is that we're teaching our children to cultivate the land and to love the land. And these children are going to grow one day.
estos niños van a ser los futuros concejales tal vez o agrónomos para poder cuidar la tierra y necesitamos el apoyo de ustedes ahora.
They could be the future council and we need your support right now.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gracias.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Yo vengo aquí con toda mi familia
I come here with all my family
para demostrarles a todos ustedes que sabemos con toda mi familia saber trabajar nuestra tierra.
to show you that with all my family we know how to cultivate the land.
Yo quisiera que algún día ustedes pudieran vernos con toda nuestra familia, trabajar para que ustedes vean qué bonito es tener nuestra tierra con plantas.
I wish that maybe you one day can come and see us work the land with all the family and to show you how beautiful it is to work with the family.
Y muchas gracias por todo, por ustedes, su ayuda.
Thank you for all your help.
Gracias.
Good afternoon. Miguel Angel Perez, Los Angeles Land Use Coalition. Again, one more time. This is an example of one family out of 330 families at 41st and Alameda. In retrospect, think about what the City Council did some time ago, last year, in respects to denying the fact of what was being said today, food, that the families grow for themselves, and these children. Think about that. That is why the campesinos are endearing and enduring of the land. Prime example of what people want to do for themselves. Again, aquí estamos y no nos vamos. Tierra, libertad. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming here today for public comment. We also have one more public speaker card. I'd like to invite forward Bob Aquino from the Engineers and Architects Association.
Thank you, Mr. President and council members. On Monday, the Los Angeles Employee Relations Board confirmed what I told many of you 2.5 years ago, that city management was working in collusion with Butchert to decertify the Engineers and Architects Association. That's been confirmed now. Your CAO kept telling you that I was mistaken and/or delusional. It is now evident that your CAO was either mistaken or was lying to you outright because his staff prolonged the last round of negotiations either under his direction or under his nose. Your employees, my members, now understand that city management broke the rules and exhibited a lack of integrity as it applies to dealings with Engineers and Architects Association represented classes. The honorable thing for the CAO to do to save you the obvious embarrassment that attends this ruling would be to resign his position and allow a fresh start for the relationship between a new CAO and EAA. Instead, the CAO is playing the same old tune again. EAA asked to open the current round of negotiations back in November of 2003. The CAO would not agree to start negotiations until April of this year. Where EAA offered to negotiate 7 days a week, the CAO agreed to negotiate 1 day a week, and in the entire period, April to June of this year, still hasn't given us all of their proposals. On Friday, June 25th, I sent a letter to the Employee Relations Board declaring that we are at an impasse in these negotiations. I understand that it might have been difficult in the last round of negotiations for you to determine whether your CAO or I was speaking truthfully to you on these issues. There's no longer a question that the CAO was not informing you of what was going on in the negotiations or with the attack on EAA. The CAO claimed he had no knowledge of this conspiracy, and if we take him at his word, then he is surely guilty of negligence. I respectfully submit that if you want your employees, my members, to respect the rules in place and to continue to act honestly towards the city's management, you'll have to assert control over the negotiating process because the CAO does not seem capable or willing to deal with EAA on a professional basis. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Bob. Appreciate your public testimony today. This closes public comment for today's meeting. If we can recess the regular meeting and please call roll for the special meeting.
Cardenas, Garcetti, Gruel, Han, Labange, Ledlow, Miskowski, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Smith, Villaraigosa, Weinstein, Padilla, 12 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, we have 2 items.
There are actually 4 items. The first 2 items are public hearings have been held, and they're Planning Land Use Management Committee reports, and they are in Council District 12.
Okay. We have is number 3 one that requires public comment?
Yes, it does.
Okay, we have 1 public speaker card for number 3, so let's hold that on the desk. Any other specials? On the special meeting, we'll return to the other ones. We just have 12 members, so there are a couple ordinances involved. 3 has been called special by a public speaker card. And number 1?
Yeah, item number 1 and 2, they're both ordinances, and they're Planning Land Use Management Committee reports in Council District 12.
Okay, and when we return to the regular meeting, Mr. Reyes, we'll get to number 76.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so on the balance of the items, if we can please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 aye.
Okay, those are approved.
And there is a closed session in this meeting. Do you wish to continue that matter to the, and have it considered with the closed session in the regular
Yes,
meeting?
let's put those together. And item number 3, we have 1 public speaker card. If we can take up item 3, and I'd like to invite Sylvia Lynn Hawkins forward on special agenda item 3, Ms. Hawkins.
Again, good evening, everyone. Concerning item 3, concerning the community council and us getting different election and regulations together as I continue to run for council seat number 9, I am very much against the style of voting that have changed concerning now internet and laptop and computers. I'm very much against almost voting. We have been so much off in voting. I have registered votes, and there's over 8 different places you can register to vote, and there is over 8 different mistakes in voting, whether you are able or disabled. I am very much concerned about us coming to one area, one building, which is City Hall of Los Angeles, to vote or to vote a person in their office position. I am very much concerned and very much confident that I will win District number 9. But I'm very much concerned, who are we putting in these office positions? We need wisdom up and not money and that you're rich. Now you get in your office position. I'm very much concerned of things that happen in Inglewood, things that happen in Carson, things that happen in Compton, dealing with illegal voting. There's been voting papers that I have voted.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. We're dealing with a lease for the Encino Community Council, so if you could wrap things up. Thank you.
As a disabled person, you can come in to vote or you can mail it in. It was not reached to the mailing person.
Okay.
So I'm very
Thank you very
concerned
much.
about voting.
Okay, we appreciate your comments. That closes public comment for this. Any council members wishing to be heard? Ms. Hahn?
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Members, I just wanted to call this special because this is the first lease that is coming to this to the City Council under the new ordinance which we enacted on how to cut red tape for neighborhood councils when they enter into leases for office space. This was something that I know Dennis Zine cares very much about. We heard testimony after testimony of frustration by neighborhood councils that merely wanted to use their empowerment, find space, which many of them told us was at the basic level of being empowered, was find a space to do their business. And what they found was they came up against our city bureaucracy and came up against our process, which sometimes takes over 6 months to enter into a lease. So this city council took recommendations and enacted this ordinance that instead of going through the regular process of going through the Municipal Facilities Commission, that instead done and the city attorney will sign off on their leases, and then they come to city council for our approval. Again, these are leases that are a year or less, and that are less than $20,000. For instance, this lease I think we're approving today is a $300 a month lease that will be for a year. So again, this is to help cut the red tape. We certainly don't have to talk about these each time they come to us, because we have several that are in the can right now that will come to us, but I wanted to highlight this for all of us and for those watching to say that we have done one more thing to cut the red tape for neighborhood councils that are trying to acquire space for their meetings. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hahn. If we can please open the roll on this item. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That item is approved. If we can go back to the regular agenda, Mr. Reyes has a motion, I believe.
Council President, I rise to make a motion to send item 75 to Planning, Land Use, and Management. It's a land use issue. I've been working with Councilmember Perry.
Okay.
She agrees. We might have some questions and issues on this. It would behoove us if we can do that, and I want to thank her for support and cooperation on that.
Okay. There's no objection to that. We will send that item to Planning, Land Use, and Management Committee. So ordered. Okay. Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 10 was called special by Council Member Parks.
Mr. Parks, we have item number 10 now before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On item 10, I'd ask that we make a verbal amendment on instruction number 3, that we add a new instruction in which the prior one, we're asking Cultural Affairs to come back to Budget and Finance with a wording. We have that wording today, and we'd replace it with instruct the Cultural Affairs Department to vary the rental fees based on the scope of the proposed activity and the ability of the leasee to pay. To be the new item, recommendation number 3.
Okay. We'll submit that as a friendly amendment if there's no objection. And as amended, if we can open the roll on item 10. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That item is approved as amended. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item number 13 was called special by Councilmember Hahn.
Okay. Item 13, Ms. Hahn.
Thank you very much, Chair. Colleagues, I have before you today something that is another historic event in my district and for the community of San Pedro. And I'm asking you today to give the final approval to the Center Street Lofts project, which will be built in downtown San Pedro. This project will be built on a lot in downtown San Pedro that has been vacant for 30 years. And this lot has been such a visible symbol to that community of years of failure, of broken promises, of attempts, of starts, and then again of the same vacant lot. This is a process that we began when the Urban Land Institute came to San Pedro and studied us. And many of you are familiar with the Urban Land Institute, and they came back and they gave us a blueprint, a roadmap for how we could begin to revitalize downtown San Pedro as well as our waterfront. And they made it very clear that while our waterfront was our instant entertainment, was our greatest assets, and you heard yesterday of the waterfront that we're building in Wilmington, but we're also revitalizing the waterfront in downtown San Pedro. But along with that, we don't want to leave the downtown behind. We don't want to leave a very charming, unique downtown behind. And what they suggested, and what we took to heart, was that if we build an instant constituency in downtown San Pedro to walk along our waterfront, to eat in our restaurants, to shop in our shops, that's how we would truly jumpstart economic development, a renaissance, and revitalization. This project will build 114 lofts, over 20,000 square feet of commercial retail space. This was a process where we involved the community. We involved the community in listening to the pitches by the different developers who had their idea for what they would develop there. We had standing room only community meetings, not only with the advisory committee that sits in the Pacific Avenue corridor, but with the general community who actually heard developers talk about it and who actually were responsible for helping to choose the final developer. And the final developer is the Sim Group, and they were selected in April 2003, again, to build these lofts and to build this commercial retail space. They have continued to work with the community. I give them huge kudos. They've continued to modify their development, to listen to concerns, and we really believe that with unanimous approval of this project today by this body, it will be the beginning of a huge renaissance of downtown San Pedro, and we believe everyone will be successful. We believe the developer of this project will be successful, but we really believe that those people who have hung in there in downtown San Pedro, who have hung in there with the restaurants from the Papadakis Taverna to the Whale and Ale, that those people will continue to reap major amounts of success as a result of having people living and enjoying downtown San Pedro. So I wanted to call this special because I never wanted to miss an opportunity to talk about something that I really think is important, not only for San Pedro, but for all of Los Angeles. Renaissance is happening everywhere. Property values are going through the roof everywhere, and this is going to be a great example of finally attracting an investment and attracting a development that will spur great things for the next 20 years. So thank you very much. I appreciate your support of this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hahn. And you can see Ms. Hahn in downtown San Pedro on the new Flavors of LA show on Channel 35, coming at you soon. If we can please open the roll on the item, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. Congratulations, Ms. Hahn. Next items, are they both closed session items?
Mr. President, item number 40 was adopted previously. However, there is an amending motion that has been distributed. That item should be reconsidered so that the amending motion can be adopted.
Okay, is that technical in nature?
Yes, it is.
Okay. If we can please open the roll on reconsideration, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That item is reconsidered. Colleagues, as you will hear, that's 10 ayes, so we're down to a bare quorum right now. If we can please consider the item as amended. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That is approved as amended. Go back to the last two items.
Okay. Do you wish to clear the desk before going into closed session?
Sure, let's clear the desk.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Okay, those items are posted and referred.
The excuses on the desk, Councilmember Misikowski requests to be excused Friday, July 16th for personal business that meets council policy.
She's excused.
Councilmember Perry requests to be excused August 17th, 18th, and 20th for city business, and those meet council policy.
Okay, she is excused as well.
And that clears the desk for closed session, and that was item number 4 from the special meeting.
Okay. We're going to go now in accordance with California state law into closed session for 2 items. Colleagues, if we can please, sorry, for 1 item. The other one was continued. If we can please clear the room. Thank you. Welcome back, colleagues. We are back in open session. There's no action that requires, there are no actions required right now in open session, so we can go to announcements. Colleagues, any announcements this weekend? Mr. Zine.
Mr. President, Chair, Eric Garcetti. The 4th of July, we're not going to have a meeting on Friday, and the 4th of July is going to be on Sunday, and the city's on a holiday on Monday. And I just want to invite all of our viewers to the San Fernando Valley, whichever venue you want in the San Fernando Valley. We've got one at Warner Center Park, Topanga and Oxnard. It's going to be a free concert and free fireworks show in the southwest San Fernando Valley. And I know we have 2 other events, to my knowledge, maybe 3 in the San Fernando Valley, and I will let my colleagues announce those in their respective districts. But the Valley is alive and well with the 4th of July celebration of fireworks. So wherever you live in the city of Los Angeles, we do have 3 big fireworks shows in the Valley. And the one in the 3rd district is at Warner Center Park, Topanga and Oxnard, free concert, free fireworks show. You're all invited. And my colleague Wendy Gruhl has one, and my colleague Greg Smith. So I'd like to turn it over to Wendy Gruhl.
Thank you. Mr. Zine, Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. We have several events in my district. One is the Sunland Tahunga Parade in the morning at 10 o'clock on Foothill Boulevard. Valley Village also has a parade at 10 o'clock as well. Similarly, that evening at Verdugo Hills High School is a fireworks display, as well as at CBS Radford, the Studio City Chamber of Commerce is also holding an event. So we encourage everyone to celebrate, be safe, and to remember that having fireworks on your own is illegal. We encourage them to go to a legal site, which is having fireworks in the city of Los Angeles.
And they used to say, people used to say, we want to do fireworks in our neighborhood because the city's not sponsoring events. Well, that's no longer an excuse. The city is sponsoring events, so there's no need for people to torch their neighborhoods with the illegal fireworks, which are all illegal in the city of Los Angeles. Greg?
Thank you very much. Mr. Zine, Mr. Smith?
The event in the great north end of the San Fernando Valley is the biggest because we're a couple hundred feet above yours, so we start higher. So our fireworks are much higher up there. It's at the Shepherd of the Hills Church on Rinaldi and Porter Valley Drive in the community of Porter Ranch, beginning at dusk, but the festivities begin early in the afternoon with many booths and a lot of opportunities to buy things and eat things. And also later in the evening, they'll have a lot of choral presentations, and the whole thing's free. Anyone who wants to come, there's seating on the property, there's seating at the shop center across the street. It's a great event.
Thank you. Other announcements, Mr. Parks?
Sorry,
I'm
just
sorry,
to add,
Ms.
the
Gruhl.
other big event that is in Councilmember Padilla's district, but Mr. Cardenas and my district are around it, is at Hanson Dam, which is again one of the largest events as well for celebration on 4th of July.
Great. Mr. Parks and then Ms. Han.
Yes, I'd like to announce that we're going to have the 2nd annual Jazz and Blues Festival at Lemert Park in the Vision Theater parking lot. Starts at 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock. It's co-sponsored by the Cultural Affairs in the 8th District. And then at dusk, we're going to have a fireworks show sponsored by the 8th, 9th, 15th, and 10th, and whoever else wants to contribute.
Thank you very much, Ms. Han and then Ms. Miskowski.
Event sponsored by the 15th Council District is down in San Pedro at Cabrillo Beach. John Olguin every year raises money to put on a spectacular fireworks program at Cabrillo Beach. It starts at 9 p.m. and this year it is supposed to be the biggest and the best that has ever been shot off in San Pedro. So remember, fireworks are illegal in the city of Los Angeles. Go to a city-sponsored fireworks show. Be safe, be sane.
Ms. Miskowski.
On the west side, we have a parade at 11 o'clock in the community of Westchester, down starting at Manchester Boulevard. And we have the big parade in the Pacific Palisades at 1 o'clock, which is just always huge. Great turnout. Starts with a skydiver coming in and landing to kick off the parade. And then that evening at Dockweiler Beach, the fireworks will begin at 9 o'clock as well. So I think the city is well covered, and everyone should have a safe and sane happy 4th of July.
Thank you all very much, colleagues. Another announcement, Ms. Gruhl? Any other announcements? We will, of course, we have the Hollywood Bowl fireworks, which is a great place to go and celebrate as well in Mr. Labange's district, and celebrations throughout the city. So we wish everybody a prosperous and happy 4th. Adjourning motions, colleagues. If I can ask everybody to rise, please. Ms. Gruhl?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's with great sadness that I ask us to adjourn. on behalf of Saul Bojarski. Many of you know Donna Bojarski, who is a very good friend of mine and who worked here in City Hall for a long time. Her father passed away Sunday, June 27th. He was born in Boyle Heights on October 1st, 1919. He passed away at his home in Beverly Hills as indicated on Sunday, June 27th. He graduated from Hollywood High School and UCLA. He was a dedicated member of the Jewish community, an opera lover, a popular insurance agent, and had a big, ready smile and a joyous heart. He lived a very good and long life, and he'll be profoundly missed. His services were yesterday. Memorial contributions can be made to Temple Israel of Hollywood or Brandeis Bardeen Institute. So we all send our condolences to his wife, Selena Bojarski, his daughter, Donna Bojarski, son-in-law, Jonathan Jacoby, grandson, Joshua, his brother, Eli Boyer, sister-in-law, Michelle Boyer, and sister, Sarah Ladera. And we all send our good wishes to them.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. Any other, Mr. Zine?
I have two. Milo O. Frank passed away June 13th. Milo O. Frank, 82 years of age, motion picture producer, agent for such Hollywood luminaries as Humphrey Bogart, Marilyn Monroe, Joel McRae, and many others. Passed away at Cedars-Sinai Hospital after a lengthy battle with Parkinson's disease. Frank was born in New York City in his parents' residence. He attended USC, UCLA, University of Colorado, and was a student at the U.S. Naval School of Oriental Languages. He served 3 years active duty as a Marine Corps officer. Frank was known to his peers as a charming gentleman and a passionate promoter of the talent he represented, including actress, dancer Sally Forrest, who later became his wife. He is survived by his wife, Sally Forrest. May Milo O. Frank rest in peace. The other adjourning motion is for Ronald Rose, passed away June 26. Ronald Rose, a longtime resident of West Hills in Council District 3, passed away on June 26 at age 75. Was a veteran of the Korean War and a teacher for over 30 years at Milton Junior High and Mulholland Junior High. He will be remembered as a devoted father, husband, and friend. He will be greatly missed by his family and friends. He is survived by his wife, Millie, 4 boys, Ken, Doug, Brad, and Eric, and 5 grandsons. He is the father of Eric Rose, who was a former deputy to former council member Laura Chick. May Ronald Rose rest in peace.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zine. Any others, colleagues? If not, wish everybody a happy 4th, and Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll. Thank you all very much. Have a good weekend, and this meeting is adjourned.